Hello and welcome to Who Watches Who, a Doctor Who podcast with me, Matthew, and as always, I am joined with...
Hello, it's Scott.
Oh, he's just a quiet guy. He was a quiet guy this time. This week,
Yeah, it's one of those situations where I never know how long you're going to extend the with, so I'm just waiting, because sometimes...
Why not? Why don't you know? Why don't you know?
Because you always change it. It's so annoying.
That doesn't sound right. I feel like you should know these things, and just be a bit more professional in the future, maybe. You know, that's what I think you need to be. But this episode we are recording is Doctor Who: An Adventure in Space and Time, which is not an episode at all. It is a movie, and it's about Doctor Who. It's not Doctor Who, unless it is right at the end. Spoilers. This movie first came out on the 21st of November 2013, which was a Thursday and a very upsetting 9 years, 11 months, and 10 days ago at the time of recording. At the time, the US president was one Barack Obama, whose book I'm listening to right now. It's a decent read. I've never heard Obama swear so much. The UK Prime Minister was David Cameron, and we'd all rather forget about it. It was a rather quiet day in history because everybody in the world was busy being in the cinema. And what were they watching in the cinema? Too busy to do anything else because this movie had taken over the world.
So, this weekend, are we talking about what happened on the 23rd of November, the weekend box office, or are we talking about the 21st specifically?
We are talking about the highest grossing movie for the week, then November 17 until November 24.
Well,
what movie is the highest grossing movie?
Okay, so
week?
We did Day of the Doctor 2 years ago, and we discovered that Day of the Doctor was either first place or second place, I can't remember, but it was in direct competition with a movie called Gravity, and now I'm not sure if Gravity was out yet, so it's all up to your imagination, I guess. Is it Gravity?
Okay. It is not Gravity. Gravity is out. Gravity has been out for about a month at this point. Gravity has been out for about a month.
And it's not saving Mr. Banks, because that came out like a week after another movie that's set in the 60s. It's a biopic about round about the same time about getting the rights to Mary Poppins. You know, it's a very similar movie.
Never made it to number one.
Have you seen Saving Mr. Banks?
I have not. No, I have not.
It's pretty decent. It's very fictionalized. Even more fictionalized than this Doctor Who movie we're discussing today. So, I honestly could not tell you. Oh, could it be a Hunger Games movie?
Ooh, you are close. You are. Hunger Games becomes number one November 24.
Okay.
You are just a few days off.
And it's not Saw because is it it could still be a horror movie? No, it's a month too late.
I mean, in the series that it's a part of, you could consider it a horror movie because of how bad it is.
In 2013, is it a James Bond movie?
No, it's not a James Bond movie, but it is a big franchise.
It's a big franchise, starring whom?
Yeah. I don't know if I say it, it'll be really obvious. Natalie Portman.
Oh, for the Dark World. Okay.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
I was like, I can't say Hemsworth. It'll make it too obvious. What's a slightly off-center choice for the lead for the Dark World?
I mean, compared to Thor: Love and Thunder, is it that bad?
Yeah. They are both bad for different reasons. Thor: The Dark World is boring and bland, whereas
famously,
Love and Thunder is just a mess.
And famously, The Dark World completely wastes Christopher Eccleston when he could have been in Day of the Doctor instead. You know, that would have been so much more amazing. But, you know, it's his choice.
Isn't that upsetting? Isn't that upsetting? Eccleston was in this and not the 50th anniversary. Yeah. Yeah, it sucks, and it sucks. It's a sucky movie that sucks. But November 24th, The Hunger Games: Catching Fire becomes #1 at the box office. Thor: The Dark World beat out Ender's Game, which is certainly a movie of all time. It's fine. Apparently, the book is very good, but the movie I thought was meh. I think that's a little Asa Butterfield movie. I
Right.
think.
See, whenever
Yes, it is. Asa
whenever
Butterfield is the lead of that movie.
whenever people talk about Ender's Game, I think the movie Bender's Game, which is a Futurama movie. Is that the
good
Dungeons and
movie.
Dragons one?
That's-
Yeah, it's probably better in
It
Ender's
is,
Game.
yeah. Yeah, probably. I wouldn't be surprised. But the book is apparently good. It's been on my to read list for ages, but there's just too many books.
I know.
And they take
there's-
forever.
I know. It's
You know?
insane.
Yeah, they suck. They suck. But that is all I have for the On This Day segment of Doctor Who and Adventure in Space and Time, which aired on whatever date I said I closed down my document. So,
21st
Scott, why
of
don't you
November.
take us... Yeah, why don't you take us in to the behind-the-scenes writers, whatever you want to call this segment for this movie thing. I'll let you name it. Go, give it a name right now.
Behind the scenes corner. Okay.
Okay, it's the yep behind-the-scenes corner. Okay, got you. Welcome to the segment.
And when you're doing the YouTube bookmarks, make sure you call it that exactly. All the yeps. So this was, of course, written by Mark Gatiss, and we've discussed this man before, famously in The Unquiet Dead. So if you want to get a background on him, you can listen to that podcast. But he grew up loving Doctor Who. You know, he grew up around the John Pertwee era. And he was completely fascinated by a ton of documents about the creation of the show, most notably The Making of Doctor Who by Terence Dix and Malcolm Hulke, which is a really good book for the time. Released in 1973, and he just loved reading Doctor Who magazine like us. You know, we're nerds. We just love reading behind the scenes information about the show. And
Yeah.
Mark Gatiss really found the human side of the story compelling, and particularly the reasons surrounding Hartnell's departure, which would have been interesting because, of course, the information wasn't that public back in the day. You know, you really have to search deep for this kind of Doctor Who information. And, you know, if Doctor Who magazine only came out in 1979, like, you just wouldn't really know how the show was made before then, apart from, like, a few books here and there. Compared to now, on the day when we have literally BBC iPlayer just opened up the archives and we have this information open to us. It's insane. So, something similar to this biopic was almost made in 1993 when Kevin Davies was interested in producing a 30th anniversary celebration called The Legend Begins. And this would mix documentary interview footage with dramatized segments, and the production got rid of the dramatized aspect and just became a normal documentary called 30 Years in the TARDIS, which is another thing I'm surprised BBC iPlayer don't have. An Adventure in Space and Time and this documentary. I'm surprised we don't have either of them. It's very strange.
Yeah. Maybe it's they got what they could get, but for say Doctor Who and Adventure in Space and Time, like they renewed their contract with ITV for 6 more months and they just have to wait it out because there's no buyout option or something like that, you know, or it was low on the priority list and they were just they want too much to buy out, we'll just wait. Who knows how streaming contracts work? I have no idea.
Oh yeah, it's such a muddy field to figure out because there's so much contracts involved and just insane.
And there's so many services. There's so many streaming services.
But this mixing dramatized footage and interviews would have been interesting because, you know, you can kind of not tell a story in a way. You could just tell stories of, oh yeah, this was how the Daleks were created, and oh yeah, this was how William Hartnell was approached, without having to tell a proper story, and you can really just get into everything. Whereas this biopic suffers from having to really scale back because there's a lot of people not written into the story, like David Whittaker, who was the first script editor. He's not involved in this biopic, so. And of course, we have to ignore the creation of the Daleks. There's a deleted scene of the creation of the Daleks, which wouldn't have fit into the story because, if you fit it into a story, the plot kind of just drags for a bit. You have to worry about that kind of stuff. But
yeah, and also you're being tangential to the protagonist. Like it's Hartnell's story, not the Dalek story. So the Daleks go in the background.
Like it's extremely hard to make a compelling biopic and trying to stay in the realms of reality. In 2003, Mark Gatiss wound up proposing a biopic to BBC4, which I guess would have been very similar to what we wound up getting 10 years later. But he was told there was no available slot or budget. Nobody was interested in Doctor Who. Doctor Who would never be popular. Anyway, about 6 months later, a guy called Russell T Davies comes in and basically brings back Doctor Who. And this is why we're talking about it today. So it's funny how much things changed that quickly.
Yeah, it's crazy. Imagine if Mark Gatiss brought back Doctor Who instead.
I mean, we did discuss his proposal, and he proposed a full series in 2001. I believe he wanted Derek Jacobi to be the Doctor, and it was going to be like half-hour episodes.
That was so long ago we talked about that.
Yeah,
Christ,
about a year ago we discussed that.
Yeah, no, cool stuff. What a guy. What a weird scorpion man he is.
So just talk about a few things that were cut for time in this story. Mark Gatiss had to cut a lot out of his script as he quickly realised there was just too much to cover in 90 minutes. There was originally going to be a subplot of Terry Nation and Ray Cusick, who designed the Daleks. We discussed this. There's going to be scenes with Bill's agent, who turned out to be his son-in-law later in life, Terry Carney. His character got scrapped completely. And he also realised he needed to condense most of the people in Doctor Who's history. 4 main characters are basically better than 12 main characters, because there's a lot of people involved in Doctor Who history, including a 10-year-old who, including a 10-year-old child whose father basically created Doctor Who, and 60 years later, this 10-year-old child would grow up to be a 70-year-old man complaining.
God, Jesus Christ, yeah.
My dad invented Doctor Who.
To catch on what you were talking about, yeah.
Maybe he should have been the main character, this little 10-year-old kid. Oh God.
Yeah.
So people like David.
A compelling story.
People like David Whittaker were removed and combined into the associate producer character called Mervyn Pinfield, who's also a very interesting character. He also realised that his plan of exploring more of Hartnell's life would be difficult. He wanted some flashbacks to show his relationship with his mother, who gave birth to him out of wedlock, and he wanted flash forwards to the present, where Hartnell's granddaughter explores Hartnell's old home. Yeah, this is way too much for a Doctor Who biopic. You have to stay in the realms of, this is what happened between 1963 and 1966. No more. You can't explore any more than that.
Doctor Who focused.
Yeah.
You need to keep it Doctor Who focused. Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
although it does sound interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe write a book. Maybe write a book about Hartnell's life, and go into all of that stuff.
There is a book written by Hartnell's granddaughter. I think it's called
Wow.
Who's There. It came out in the 90s. Apparently it's really good. Hartnell's granddaughter did helped out a lot on the production of this biopic, by the way. So I guess a lot of it would be accurate. I would be interested. I've never actually read that book.
I thought you were about to say I've never read a book. That'd be interesting. I've never read a book. I want to know what they're like.
There was also at one point there was also going to be a framing device that would be a recreation of an interview with Hartnell outside a costume months after he left Doctor Who on the show Points West. If you look this up, it's Hartnell in 1967 just talking about his experience of Doctor Who and why he left Doctor Who. He was just full on lying about the fact that maybe he was fired, or maybe it was more to do with his health. He was like, oh yeah, I just needed a change. I wanted to do stage work, basically. And he talks about Doctor Who in a very interesting way, if you want to look it up on YouTube.
It's the association of this Dalek question, this mechanical, mobile object that I'm beginning to find it, distracting. And they were difficult to play to, because you're not looking into human eyes, you know what I mean? You're looking at a metal object moving about with a voiceover.
But it so much captured the public
I know
imagination.
it did, yes.
Do you think you'll ever shake it off?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
How?
Of course. By making a success in something else.
I don't think I've ever seen Hartnell as a real human being before.
I know, it's one of the rare interviews with Hartnell, because obviously before Doctor Who, he wasn't in Doctor Who, obviously. And after Doctor Who, he was very ill, only appearing in a few TV shows here and there, but not really going out in the world. He was a reclusive man, so a very rare interview indeed.
Yeah, it's strange. It's like I'm just like watching him talk, and I'm like, I've never heard this man's voice outside of playing the Doctor. Like I've never heard him talk like a human without going like every 5 seconds before.
Yeah, and of course you can see an interview and think of, oh yeah, there's a man behind the Doctor, you know, there's a man behind William Hartnell. He's not just Doctor Who, he's a completely different person. And that's a fascinating prospect, you know.
It's one of the things that I liked about this movie, is it showed you like Hartnell as a dude, and like even watching it, it made me be like, maybe I'll go back and watch some Hartnell era episodes. But I know they're bad. I've seen plenty of them. I know they're really bad. But like watching this movie makes me want to watch the Hartnell era and be like, look at them trying, but they're bad. So
you know, you are nearly on The Chase. I think The Chase is the next story you have to watch. I would recommend, you know, maybe some drugs to watch that with, because it's an insane episode. It includes Frankenstein's monster body slamming a Dalek, so it's really fun. Yeah.
But then the next 50 episodes will be really bad. That's the rule.
So it's time to talk about the cast. Of course, we have David Bradley as William Hartnell, and Edgar Wright actually suggested that he'd be perfect for the role. Of course, he worked on The World's End just around about the same time, I would say. And Mark Gatiss offered the role to him as the two men watched Queen Elizabeth's Diamond Jubilee River Pageant on June 3rd, 2012. So it sounds like a cute little date.
What a fun guy. And it's cool that Edgar Wright recommended him for the role, because he is perfect for the role. Like there's never been a man who looks more like William Hartnell than David Bradley does when he's in his full makeup. Like he just completely transforms into him. And then you see like him go about in like other things like that. It's like you never think William Hartnell. Like David Bradley is top-notch underrated actor. He just appears and stuff. He's amazing in Game of Thrones.
Oh yeah,
absolutely fantastic.
I say oh yeah, I've never seen him in Game of Thrones, I don't think. But of course he's most known for Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, Broadchurch, Afterlife. We've recently covered him on Sarah Jane, Death of the Doctor, as one of the Vulture people. He was recently Solomon on Dinosaurs in a Spaceship, just the year before this biopic came out. We just saw him in The Doctor Falls, where he goes out in the fog and he goes,
Yeah.
And we're about to cover him again next month with Twice Upon a Time, just before we do the new Christmas
special. I can't
escape
David Bradley right now.
We'll almost have covered all of his major roles in Doctor Who, because of course we also did The Power of the Doctor.
Dinosaurs in a Spaceship. Oh yeah, Power of the Doctor as well. Yeah, God, we have covered almost every David Bradley episode. Amazing.
Just one more to go.
This is secretly being a David Bradley podcast the whole time.
Of course, another cast member we have is Jessica Raine as Verity Lambert. She was in Call of a Midwife between 2012 and 2014. And just before this biopic came out, she had just appeared in the Series 7 episode called Hide, which I do not remember at all. It's one of the Spooky House. Basically the plot of like 10 other Doctor Who episodes.
Yeah, I vaguely remember Hide, but I could not tell you the plot of it without having to look it up. So it's not an episode I have seen many times.
Yeah, so I can't tell you how good she was in that episode, but I'm sure she was brilliant, because she is a brilliant actress.
Phenomenal. She was phenomenal in
it. She would later do Fortitude, which stars Christopher Eccleston. So of course she's working with all of the Doctors basically. She appeared in an episode of Inside Number 9 called The Devils of Christmas, and she actually recently did The Devil's Hour with Peter Capaldi, which is one of those shows where I think series 1 was like 3 episodes too much, but her role in it, she was completely captivating. She was absolutely brilliant in this show. Like, I just was hooked on her performance.
I need to watch that show still. I kind of forgot about it.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. It just kind of drags. And we're doing a second series now. I'm not too sure if it needs a second series. I felt like more of a limited series kind of thing, you know. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see. Next up, we obviously have Sacha Dhawan as Boris Hussein, and I've never seen this man before in my life.
He looks a lot like Jodie Whittaker, I think.
In the original draft, Boris Hussein was actually going to be depicted as the person who directed all of Hartnell's episodes, despite only directing 11 episodes in real life, 4 episodes of An Unearthly Child and 7 of Marco Polo. And I'm glad they didn't depict him as the director of all of Hartnell's stuff, because that's kind of taking away credit from all of the other directors who made Doctor Who, you know? I'm glad he didn't stick with that. Sacha...
And,
sorry, carry on.
Yeah, Sacha Dhawan, I was just going to say Sacha Dhawan's great. He's so good in this.
Of course, he also did an episode of Sherlock. He was the lead in Marvel's Iron Fist. Do you remember Iron Fist?
He's not the lead in Iron Fist.
I mean, he
the lead
was.
In Iron Fist is
he was
Iron
a
Fist.
lead. He was a lead.
Right.
He was like one of the dudes.
I do not remember him being in Iron Fist. That's insane. Although, to be fair, I only watched 1 episode of Iron Fist, so it could be I just never saw him because he didn't show up in the first episode. But it was such a bad first episode, I didn't keep watching.
I made a mistake of watching the entire first season, and it's not good.
That is the show that stopped me watching every other Marvel show. I never watched Punisher. I never watched The Defenders. I didn't watch Luke Cage.
Yeah. The Defenders is what made me stop watching all of those shows, because Sigourney Weaver was the main villain in Defenders, and then she gets murdered like episode 4 out of 8. So it's like, what's the point? Cool. You're gonna kill off one of your most interesting characters. Great, thank you so much. And of course, Sacha Dhawan was in a little-known TV show. I don't know if you've heard of this. Doctor Who. Do you know this?
No, I've never heard of it before in my life.
Of course, he is amazing as the Master in Doctor Who. He is.
Yes,
so good.
He is great. He gives a great monologue, which is really lucky for him. That's really lucky for him.
You know, despite everything, he really shines whenever he appears. He's just He's just completely charismatic, and he just has all of the energy in the world. He's really great. And he was in episode 2 of Dracula, which was also written by Stephen Moffat and Mark Gatiss, which actually aired the day after his appearance in Doctor Who. So that was a fun little week for him. He went on to do the great...
That's insane that he was in all that stuff, and I did not see him, like all that stuff that's tangentially like things that I was interested in or watched. But I had never seen him act until he showed up as the Master.
Interesting. You never seen the episode of Sherlock he was in?
Nope.
Wow,
Never seen the episode of Sherlock he's in. Yeah.
And of course, he recently did the TV show Wolf, which was also stars the Game of Thrones man. He was also in Misfits and the Inhumans. He was also in Inhumans. The other guy, Iwan Rowan.
Oh, Ewan Rowan. Yeah, the guy from Game of Thrones. Yeah.
And of course, there's this really funny Doctor Who reference where we basically blame Jodie Whittaker's Doctor for being. I can't remember what the actual quote is. Maybe you'll put it in here.
Sure, yeah. Wow, what a fun quote.
Yeah, it's fun. And of course, we have Brian Cox as Mr. Sidney Newman.
Yeah, Professor Brian Cox. It's rare that he does any acting, but after doing that documentary on the science of Doctor Who, he kind of felt compelled to dip
Yeah.
his toe into the universe once more.
So
and
here's the
he's
problem.
phenomenal, completely transformative role for him,
Yeah,
like
of course.
unrecognizable almost.
Of course, this is the Scottish actor Brian Cox rather than the Professor Brian Cox. But what's confusing is Brian Cox, the Professor, did kind of like a stand-up lecture kind of thing around the same time as this, maybe like a week before, called pretty much the same thing as this, An Adventure in Space and Time. And so when BBC iPlayer announced that they were going to have Brian Cox's An Adventure in Space and Time, my ears perked up because, oh, thank God, we don't need ITVX for this biopic anymore. And then I realized, oh no, it's the fucking Professor Brian Cox. So confusing for no reason.
Yeah, they should change their names. Keep the same titles, but change the names because the titles were good, solid title, but change the name.
So people who were also considered for Sidney Newman in his film was John Lithgow, famously from Third Rock from the Sun, and Shrek, and a million other things. And
It was
also,
just in a movie I was watching the other day.
what? Oh yeah, Buckaroo Banzai.
Buckaroo Banzai, yeah.
Nice. And James Gandolfini was also considered for the role, and he is most famously known as Tony Soprano from The Sopranos. And
All right.
James Gandolfini actually died 4 months after they shot this thing, so it could have very well been his final role. So
That would have been a really interesting role for him to play.
I
That
can
would have
kind
been
of, if you,
He's got. I can see it. Like,
Yeah.
Like it would be such a different performance than you're used to seeing him do.
I don't know,
It
'cause-
would be interesting.
because
You
the
know.
way I kind of think of Tony Soprano, he is a guy who takes charge, and he's responsible for so many different things in terms
I just
of like
yeah, but he's
businesses.
not like a flamboyant man who uses like cigarette, like whatever
I mean,
the hell
he
you used to
is.
call those things. Like
He
know.
could be.
Um,
But yeah,
Yeah,
two
it's
very interesting
interesting.
actors. But I think Brian Cox absolutely nails the role of Sidney Newman in this film. Like, he is just a force of nature in this film. He's like a used car salesman. He is just so good in this film.
he is great. He is great.
Brian Cox was so excited about doing this film, he actually changed his holiday plans to do it. He had a lot of memories of television center, and one of the things this film I have to mention about this film is this was the last production, basically one of the last productions filmed at Television Centre, BBC Television Centre, because it shut down in March 2013. This was filmed in February 2013. So it's obviously a very iconic building. And of course, getting to shoot there, it's such an iconic building, really. It's a really fun
Yeah.
place to film at, and, you know, it's really sad that it's gone.
Rest in peace per building.
And, you know, this is one of the things they actually changed about the film, because early Doctor Who wasn't really filmed here. It only became its primarily location in 1969, so they changed this, which a lot of people complain about for some reason. I don't give a shit. It's a perfectly fine change.
People will complain about anything that is not 100% how it was before. You changed thing, I know, so you're wrong in that.
It's more of a little white lie. I don't mind when biopics do a little white lie, but, you know, when biopics make stuff up for no reason, just for, like, plot, to just be
Drama,
dramatic
yeah.
for no reason, like, you know, Bohemian Rhapsody did that.
That's the entire reason the Weird Al biopic exists. isn't
Yeah.
it? It's like he was watching like Bohemian Rhapsody
Yeah.
and things and went, oh, they just make it up. We can do a biopic where we just make it up.
Yeah, like, one of the things Bohemian Rhapsody really makes up is the fact in the third act, the band breaks up. And, you know, everybody is mad at Freddie Mercury for doing solo work of the other band members. Whereas in real life, they kind of took a break. They didn't break up at all. They just kind of took a break in the 80s. They all did their separate things. Roger Taylor was the first person to do his own separate thing in the 80s. But in the movie, Roger Taylor is mad at Freddie Mercury for disobeying the band. You know, he really broke up the band, even though it was never broken up in real life. Ridiculous.
That's interesting. Interesting that you say that. However, counterpoint. I saw the movie, and in the movie, it looked like they broke up. So, and they wouldn't lie in a movie because if they lie in a movie, that's illegal.
Well,
So.
yeah, sure. But the one thing I would say about An Adventure in Space and Time, just straight off the bat, we're not going to sit here and nitpick the inaccuracies because that's just pointless. I will say this is pretty much like 75% accurate to real life from what I know. And the stuff that aren't accurate to real life is just kind of like little alterations, little changes here and there. It just really doesn't matter. It's pretty much the same story. As long as you keep the same story, it's fine, you know?
Well, I think if they change a single thing from history, then they should put the movie in the bin and we shouldn't watch this, because I will not participate in extending the lie that this movie is trying to tell.
When I was doing my research, I found an article online basically saying, here are 50 things wrong with this biopic. Do you really need to go that nitpicky? Is there really a point? Like, who cares?
Yes, there is. There is a point. It's called rage baiting, and they got you.
Oh yeah, but back to Brian Cox. He's obviously done a million things. He played Hannibal Lecter in Mindhunter. He was in Braveheart, The Long Kiss, Goodnight, Rushmore, X-Men 2, Zodiac, and he is going to be in a new Lord of the Rings animated movie, which is apparently out next year. I don't know.
I didn't know they were doing a Lord of the Rings animated movie next year. What? That feels like big news.
And of course, he was previously in Doctor Who at the End of Time as an Ood. We talked about him briefly in that episode. And he just popped up in Good Omens 2 as Death. And of course, he just recently came off of his major role in Succession. He is the main guy in Succession. So, yeah.
It's not a show I've seen. Apparently it's good.
He's done a million things, though, Brian Cox. Like, he is a very busy man. He was also in the very first Planet of the Apes prequel. So, yeah, just a good actor. Great actor.
Was he in the prequel?
He was in the very first one with John Lithgow, funnily enough.
The one with
James Franco.
James
John
Franco.
Lithgow.
Yeah. And it's been so long since I've only seen the first two of those movies. I haven't seen any of the others. So the other one, there's only three. So I never saw the third one.
I'm a big Planet of the Apes fan. I think there's only 1.5, actually 2.5 bad Planet of the Apes movies. Really good franchise.
Interesting, because I saw the original and it's like meh. So.
I think the best one would be number 3 and number 4 of the original ones. That's my favorite too.
That's too many to get to.
But Mathew.
Yeah.
Would you like to go on an adventure in space and time?
Only if Brian Cox is there. I won't say which one.
Let's
and you know that it is a broadcast by the BBC because we have travelled back in time and we are watching it as if it's the 1960s. It's a very cute little detail.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it.
It's also very strange because the only way you could watch this right now is on ITV. And you know, I think I came up with a theory that because they actually do recreate some scenes from An Unearthly Child, and because An Unearthly Child is kind of like in this limbo right now because of his son, of the original script writer, not allowing the BBC to have rights to it. Maybe that's why this isn't on BBC iPlayers. I think it's the most plausible explanation at the moment.
Maybe the only, but like, could you not, if you're making this biopic, would you not be able to skirt around needing rights to recreate scenes under fair use stuff? Like, you know, it could just be like, does it not fall under like parody-ish kind of laws? You know, not parody exactly because it's not comedy, but. Same sort of idea.
You know, copyright laws are just extremely complicated, but it's like the only plausible explanation I can think of, because they really did throw everything in the kitchen sink onto the BBC iPlayer library. Like, it's insane how much is on there.
Yeah, it does make the omissions really strange.
Yeah.
The K9 show's not there. I
mean, that's because done by
I know
Disney.
I know it's really not Doctor Who at all. But
Would be insane if
But
it
where's
was
that-
on there.
it would be. I'd love it. That'd be brilliant. That would honestly be brilliant.
And
But
of
the
course,
movie opens up-
the BBC announcer guy is like, you can't rewrite history, not one line of
Oh
it.
yes,
I mean,
yes.
you know, we did rewrite history.
Nah, this is 100% accurate, pal. As the movie then goes into some very fun credits, with the original, or either a recreation or the original background, for the Doctor Who intro, with some lovely 60s jazz, make
Yeah.
it feel like we're watching Dalek Invasion of Earth 21, whatever the fuck that movie was called.
Yeah, it really is a look into what if that movie got the rights to just use the Rorschach effect,
Yeah.
and not the actual theme music. Is really interesting. And of course, the actual movie opens up with a policeman in the fog with a police box behind him, which is, of course, reminiscent of the very first episode, which opens up in a policeman in the fog standing outside of Totter's Lane with the TARDIS inside Totter's Lane. It's a really nice parallel.
Yeah, and Hartnell is watching on from his car like an absolute creep when the cop comes to knock on his window and tell him to stop being such a creepy guy. But Hartnell looks a bit like out of it and a bit not fully there. And we then cut to the dressing room where we see him puffing away at his smigarette as somebody yells him that they're ready for him on stage, and if he's ready, and he yells at them like a rude guy. I cannot believe that Hartnell was ever a rude man. It sounds so unbelievable to me that he could shout at somebody and be angry. That's totally out of character.
They do a good job at this movie of showing how unlikable William Hartnell can be, because go back to our 10th Planet episode where we discuss some nasty behind the scenes stuff that William Hartnell may have done. And of course, that was way more nasty in real life than they ever depict in this movie, but they do show like the really prickly side of William Hartnell, which is really nice to get into. And yeah, he could be a prick sometimes.
Yeah. But I mean, like, if you were 50 and looked like you were 86, I think you'd be pretty easily annoyed as well.
Yeah.
We get a very iconic shot. I say iconic. It should be iconic. It's not iconic enough. Of somebody in a Mondasian Cyberman outfit smoking a cigarette, and it is beautiful looking. It's incredible. It's like that could be wallpaper. It goes so hard. It's incredible. I love it. Best shot of the movie.
I mean, it is an actual recreation of a real life photograph.
Yeah.
Where
yes.
I think it's a Revenge of a Cyberman from the 1970s actually smoking a cigarette. So it's a recreation here, which is, I'll send you the link and you can pop it up on screen. Such an iconic image as well. It's really badass just to see the Cyberman in the streets just smoking.
Not that smoking's badass. Smoking is bad and wrong, and nobody should do it. You definitely don't look really cool.
but smoking is badass. It looks badass. And also I found this Photoshop I'll send you the Photoshop as well, of Dorothy and the Scarecrow.
Wow, they should wait for their turn. We then, everybody hushes down quiet as the Doctor has arrived, as he's finally on set in his costume. And they do kind of like build it up like this is a big deal. Like, oh shit, Hartnell is no longer having a strop, as he walks on into the TARDIS set, and we see the wonderful recreation of the first Doctor's interior in full color and everything. It's crazy looking. It looks very, very nice. Very, very nice. I don't know why I went Borat there. I've been playing. If you watch my gaming channel, then that's going to be a really relevant joke soon.
Okay.
But, hey.
But yeah, every set in this biopic is incredible to look at. Not 1 second you think, oh, that's just a recreation. You feel everything feels lived in. It feels like it's in 1960s, and it feels accurate to what was depicted in the actual show in the 60s. It's insanely well done. Like the amount of effort that went through, insane.
It's so cool. At the TARDIS console, Hartnell seems a bit out of it and tired, and we then transition to the Eurometer as we go back in time to 1965, and then 4, and then 3, as the movie starts off in this, I guess it's technically a flashback. And I forgot about this framing device in the next 10 minutes or so, because the 1963 year, I feel like is the longest out of all of them. Like, we're in 1963 for fucking ages.
I mean, fair enough.
And like, so I forgot that it started with opened up with a flashback, and it just reminds me of, did you ever watch Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Mm-hmm.
It's the moment in that movie where there's a flashback, and then like 40 minutes pass, and then they come out the flashback. I was like, oh shit, that was a flashback. I forgot about that. Like,
I do not remember a flashback at all, so I guess it passed me by.
No. Yeah, there are several flashbacks in that movie. There might be a flashback in a flashback at one point, but there's a really long flashback. It goes on for fucking ages.
I mean,
it's an incredible movie. I love it.
That kind of reminds me of Grand Budapest Hotel, which is like a flashback inside of a flashback inside of a flashback that goes forward and then back and then forward. It's insane.
That's a
great movie.
That's a great
movie. I love
movie.
that movie so much.
But the actual movie in 1963 kicks off with someone parking outside the BBC studios and getting yelled at by a mustachioed man who might be familiar to certain people.
This, of course, is William Russell, who played Ian way back at the very start of his show. It's really, there's more cameos to come, and it's really nice that they could squeeze in some of these cameos. And of course, we recently just saw William Russell probably for the last time on screen ever in Power of the Doctor, which was such a lovely moment and made me cry.
Yeah, it was a great bit. It was a great bit when he shows up. And he's all very old, just like he's very old in this. Wonder why he's old, though. He's supposed to be young in 1963. That's strange. But this is our introduction to Mr. Sidney Newman, played by Brian Cox, who is immediately just charismatic as fuck. Like, he's so entertaining to watch. He's such a strange dude. Like, he feels like a fictional character. Like, he feels like this is like a character you write about. Oh, this is what a movie producer is. Aha, like a movie producer from the 60s and the 50s and things like that. But then you look up what Sidney Newman looked like in real life, and no, it's a one-to-one accurate recreation of this man. This cartoon of a man. Like,
God, yeah, just look up an image of Sidney Newman. You will just see Brian Cox. Like, it's perfect casting. And I could also see James Gandolfini and John Lithgow in this role perfectly as well. It's like one of those roles where Brian Cox is perfect for it, but also several other actors are perfect for it. Like, you just need a heavy set man, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. Give him a mustache and off he goes. But this opens up with him going into the BBC studios after being told that's not how we do it at the BBC by Doctor Who man whose name has left my head again.
William Russell.
What was his name? Yeah, William Russell. I knew it was William, but all I could think was Hartnell. I was like, it definitely wasn't Hartnell. Which is it's a fun character beat to let us as an audience know that this guy's not like the BBC.
Yeah.
He's a maverick. He's wild. He does things differently. He parks slightly squint and doesn't even care.
And also, he just smokes the entire movie. Does he take his cigarette out? I don't think so.
Is it the same cigarette the entire time?
Maybe.
It's just that for sure.
But basically in this scene, they're basically discussing, we need a 25-minute show to fit between Grandstand, which I think was like a sports show, and Jukebox Jury, which was basically like the prototype of Top of the Pops. And a few days before I watched this biopic, I started watching the Jimmy Savile biopic, which like 20 minutes into that biopic, Jimmy Savile shows up at the office of the BBC in 1963, and we're like, yeah, jukebox jury isn't working for us. We need a show with hip music. And the entire time I was watching this scene in An Adventure in Space and Time, I was thinking, oh shit, Jimmy Savile's just like 2 corridors down.
Yeah.
Oh god.
Yeah. They probably passed each other in the hall.
Nightmare.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy to think, crazy to think that these things were happening so close together. Because you kind of segment them in your head, don't you? They're like 2 separate events. But no, they were very much just a big puddle. The Savile show is good. It is good.
Yeah,
it's a tough watch. It's rough at times.
I've only seen episode 1 for that reason. It's just it's hard to go into when there's other shows you have to watch. It's like, oh, what do I fancy? Do I fancy watching an episode of Gen V, Loki, or the Jimmy Savile show? Tough decision.
You gotta try and binge through the Savile show. Try and just be miserable for one evening rather than an entire week. But yeah, they're like, oh, we need something, and he's like, let's get sci-fi. I like sci-fi, and then he like chews on the cigarette like a penguin, or the penguin from the 1960s Batman show.
Oh shit, that's another good role for him.
Yeah. We then cut to a groovy party where everybody is doing a super groovy dance to let us know that it's the 60s. Everybody is doing the twist as they listen. And then this is our introduction to a character name. Enter here. I don't know any
Verity
characters'
Lambert.
names in this. Verity Lambert, yes.
Yes.
And it's a fun introduction. It's a strange way to introduce the character because they're like, let's stop this party to watch the first female in space because this is 1963. It's like okay, but I guess it's also the reason for doing that because she's also becomes like the first female producer for the BBC. So it's a way of highlighting the 60s as part of the start of that equality movement, and these huge steps that were being taken during that era, and how Verity Lambert went from watching a woman make history to making history herself. So I understand the reasoning behind the scene, but did the entire party really stop to watch this?
I mean, maybe it's a party to watch the actual thing, or I don't know. Maybe So it's one of those things where you have a party around the event, like a sports event.
But
I don't go to parties, so I don't know.
The space event was a Soviet, she was a Soviet woman. And in the 60s, the Soviets are the bad guys.
All right, okay, I guess. And that's another important thing, because also the whole space race of the 60s was important, and that gave birth to so much sci-fi stories, like the Fantastic Four in Marvel, for example. Like, there's so much sci-fi in the 60s happening because of this. And just to go off your point, I said I wouldn't point out any inaccuracies, but the BBC did have some female producers. However, they were part of a children's department, which, it's sexism there, because, the children's department, women no children. It's sad.
Yeah.
It's depressing.
But
do you want to guess her age when she became a producer of Doctor Who? Because it's amazing.
Oh, God. If you're saying it's amazing, it's probably very young.
Yes.
So I am going to guess 28.
Perfect. That's exactly 28, which is incredible to think about.
Bang on.
I don't know if it's a half, but
yeah, it was a half. You said it was perfect. It was 28 and a half years old.
But to think that a 28-year-old woman in the 60s became the first producer of like the world's most famous television program. That's insane. That's such a risk, but it's insane how well it worked out. Like, really cool.
Yeah.
And it's a shame. It's a shame the representation never really stuck in classic Who, because the first director was a gay Asian man. The first producer was a Jewish 28-year-old woman. And then every director and every producer after that was just a basically a straight white man until like John Nathan Turner. Really sad.
Yeah. Yeah. But hey, at least everything's fine now, right?
Oh yes, yeah, sure.
And she gets a phone call during this party, where Brian Cox is like, "Hey, I have a job offering for you," and we then cut to an interview where she's like, I gave myself 1 year to decide to get in or out of the TV industry, and I don't want to take the job you're offering me," which is weird. The weird part about the scene for me is in the scene previous, she said the exact same line of dialogue to somebody else, where she's like, I gave myself 1 year to work in TV, and then the next scene, I gave myself 1 year to work in TV, and like, it's just in case we missed that first bit. Who wrote this? Chibnall? He must have wrote that scene. Got him.
Yeah, it is a very odd bit of repetition, but it's fine. It
makes zero difference.
But the insane thing here is like Sydney Newman is straight out of the gate like, this program is going to run 40 weeks out of a year. Are you sure you want to produce this? That's fucking insane. 40 weeks on a television program a year.
Yeah, imagine making a weekly program that runs 40 weeks a year.
That's
insane. Who would do that? Who would go out of their way to make a program that comes out every week throughout the year?
That's maybe a couple of hours in length, but also talks about another television show. But...
And the quality is wildly different between episodes.
But the idea of producing a 25-minute television show each week that's also science fiction based, that takes place across time and space, insane to think about. Like 253 episodes were produced between November 1963 and June 1969. 5.5 years.
It is insane, and the workload must have been crazy, and the stress must have been mental, but cool as fuck job to have. There's way worse jobs. Way worse jobs than, I have to make hundreds of TV episodes. Oh no, what a hard life I have. Like, yeah, it'd be cool. It'd be pretty cool. We then, they start discussing, like, who the characters are for this show, and we get some fun montages of them walking around and Sydney Newman being like, there's got to be like these companions and this, and then the main guy, he has to be like a doctor, because a doctor is dignified and respecting, and he lists off like all the traits that the doctor needs to be, and they're like, he needs to be this old man, which is really strange that he says it needs to be an old man. And then we cut to the young, hip, like 55-year-old swagger that is William Hartnell. It's really strange that they backtracked on that old man thing. This guy's young.
But when I was a kid watching Doctor Who in like 2005, 2006, it blew my mind to find out that the show was initially about an old man and his grandchild and some school teachers. Like, that's so completely different to what Doctor Who was in 2006. It's insane to think about.
Doctor Who, he wears a cool jacket and he kisses teenagers. That's what he does.
Like, it's such a completely different show, like, between season 1 in 1963 and season 1 in 2005, and also between season 1
see what season 1 in 2023 is going to be like. It'll be totally different again.
God, there's so many 2000 and there's so many season 1s in
there's
the
so
show.
many, there's so many 2000s. There's been 23 2000s. There's not that many.
That's still too much, I feel like the last 7 years could have been shaved off.
Yeah, maybe, but without those 7 years, we wouldn't be where we are now. So. My TV just suddenly turned on and it just decided I want to watch BBC iPlayer for some reason. The ghost wants to watch BBC iPlayer.
That was really strange.
Yeah, don't worry. Just a mild haunting happening during this episode. Nothing to worry about. We then get introduced properly to Hartnell's character, and he's very grumpy again. which is great. It's brilliant. It really lets us know who he is as he's watching himself act on TV,
Yes.
and he's like, God, sucks, really bad show, some army show thing. Apparently he did loads of them, not surprised.
Oh, yes. From like between like 1953 and 1963, he was typecast as like the Sergeant Army Man, like in everything.
Yeah, man who
Like,
shouts.
yeah.
Maybe if he stopped shouting at people all the time, he wouldn't get cast as guy who shouts at people. Just an idea.
Yeah, we are also briefly introduced to Heather Hartnell, who looks way too young for him here. It's insane to think about. Maybe I feel like Heather Hartnell should be cast by should have an actress like 10 years older. You know, it feels weird. And also William Hartnell's granddaughter.
Think twice about it. Yeah, William Hartnell's granddaughter, who he makes cry. In this, he makes her cry, and it's very fun. Sad because although she has been annoying. She's been very annoying to him. She's sitting, she keeps like dancing a toy on top of him or something and calling him a silly idiot or stuff like that. And he's like, hey, stop that. And then he eventually yells at her, being like, you suck, go away. And she runs off being like, why are you so grumpy all the time? But I don't know. I feel like she wasn't listening.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough.
Yeah.
God, kids. Also, where's her mom and dad? Like, every time we cut to the William Hartnell house,
True, yeah,
the
we never see
granddaughter
the
was
parents.
here.
Yeah. I guess they're not important. She ate them, something like that. Don't worry.
I feel like the movie would be about her if she did eat them. Like that's a way more interesting bit of information.
No, it's just a little background. It's just a bit of background details. We then get Verity Lambert walking through the BBC studios on the way up to her office, where she runs into two men who are looking over photos of various actors to play the Doctor, and we get some lovely sexism in this scene. It doesn't come up often, like everything, I guess because they've got such a tight runtime and they're trying to tell a very specific story. They don't want to have to be focusing on every single aspect and detail of the 60s. So it's like, there was a lot of sexism and Verity Lambert had a really tough uphill battle. This is a scene showcasing that, but we can only really dedicate enough time to one scene for it, which I guess is fair enough. I had a point. It reminded me of something, and it's left my head. So you start talking now while I think. The fuck was I thinking?
I know I can't think of anything because I'm wondering what you could have been thinking about. What could you have been thinking about? I don't know.
There was only one scene. They could only show one scene. I had a thought, and I was like, "That's a good point." It's just gone.
But yeah, I feel like as Verity Lambert was more into Doctor Who, like maybe like by week 20, some of the doubts about her kind of wore off because she was such a powerful woman doing this show. Like it's insane to think about. Like she did so well. It's insane. Like she is amazing.
Crazy.
She is cool as hell.
I mean, you couldn't nail it better being like one-off / the first female producer for the BBC, and the first show you make is like a smash hit, like a fucking mega star. You knocked out the park, congratulations, hit. Like, way to go, 10 out of 10 performance.
And it's also so weird to call it a hit because for like most of Doctor Who's lifetime it was considered rubbish, like it's insane to think about how the perception has changed over time. Like we just came out of a period that a lot of people consider rubbish as well. Like, but also the show is still celebrated. It's very strange how people go up and down on Doctor Who.
People never like the stuff they watch. Like people don't like Star Wars, but they will keep watching Star Wars. People don't like Marvel, but they will keep watching Marvel. People don't like Doctor Who, but we will keep watching Doctor Who.
Oh, God,
we're sick people, and we like being angry.
I mean, that's part of the reason why we did this podcast, because we were right in the middle of a Chibnall era, and we were like, hey, we have opinions
many
on this.
Discussions. Yeah, we have very big opinions.
Have you remember what you're thinking of?
No, I'm just gonna move on.
Nice.
They're looking at the photos of the actors, and they're looking at one guy in particular, and Verity Lambert is like, "This guy's too young. He's 63. We need someone who's old. We need an old guy. Hey, 55-year-old William Hartnell. Now that's an old guy."
Which, to be fair, is completely genius because 55 is relatively young, obviously, and he looks like 100. Like the whole point is
too bad that he looked like 100 because physically he was 100.
Yes.
He might have been 55 in every legal sense, but this is a 100-year-old man.
Like I do secretly wonder if William Hartnell would have wound up surviving longer if he didn't do Doctor Who, because I imagine 3 years of that would have been so exhausting for him. And and it's a nightmare.
I mean, all the smoking and drinking and stuff
that
probably
too.
didn't help. Yeah.
But yeah, obviously the whole reason why they cast him in the first place was he's young enough, he looks old, and he should be able to manage 40 weeks out of a year doing this.
Yeah, he's 55. He's young. He's a strapping lad. He's fit and healthy. He just so happens he's also an old man. What a coincidence. But they give a phone call over to his wife, who's also his agent. Was Hartnell's wife his agent?
I mean, not in real life, but they did remove the agent character, so I guess it just streamlines thing if William Hartnell's wife convinces him to join Doctor Who.
Yeah, I guess it makes it easier. And we then get a scene with Sidney Newman and a producer guy who's an actor that I recognize but could not tell you the name of this man.
Well, he's playing a character called Mervyn Pinfield.
Good old Jeff.
He's also been in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire.
That's probably... Oh my god, he's the my son guy. My boy! My boy! My boy! That's him. He's the guy. His son is Batman, and he dies in Goblet of Fire. Robert Pattinson.
Okay.
He's the dad. He's the dad. He's the meme. That's why I recognize him.
And who else was in that movie? The Goblet of Fire? Mr. David Tennant. Which is insane to think about that David Tennant was in Harry Potter. Like, it's so weird.
Yeah. Every British actor
yeah.
is in Harry Potter, really. Yeah. Bad stuff. But we discover in this scene that basically he's like, hey, you don't need to be so mean all the time, Verity Lambert. You can be nice sometimes, maybe. This is where we're filming. Oh, we're not all mean and sexist, I swear. By the way, I invented this teleprompter thing, and I'm going to make zero money from it because I'm a silly dude. Bye. And then we never see him for the rest of the movie.
Yeah, he wound up not patenting the... He was going to call it the Piniprompter, which is based on his name, Pinfield. Yeah. But yeah, it is a real life fact, but he did invent the teleprompter and didn't receive a single penny off of it, which is insane to think about because it's like one of the most important inventions for television programs, especially live television programs. Like, insane. Still used to this day.
He'd be worth, like, his family would be worth so much money. Yeah. Like an insane amount of money. If he had only patented it. But I guess he didn't. He was no Thomas Edison. Because Thomas Edison would have been, he would have patented that before him. He would have stolen that idea as well. We then get a scene with Hartnell walking through the woods with his wife. And it's a really funny scene to begin with because there's like a horse passing by in the background and it just freaks the fuck out. Like, it is totally, like, this horse is panicking, and the lady riding the horse is is trying to calm down the horse. And to cover this in the edit, the dog that they're walking, they include a little bark of the dog barking, supposedly, at the horse. And then when the horse goes off screen, you hear it neigh and go like, yeah! It's like, oh, the horse has calmed down now. And, like, because the horse was freaking out that much, they had to put in the edit, like, just a little story of this horse's day.
Yeah, I guess
That's what I took
reshooting
away
it
from
for
the
this
scene.
biopic would have been insane. But yeah, this is a scene where Heather Hartnell is like, "You should really join Doctor Who. It sounds like a fun show, and it's for kiddies." And the scene leaves off with William Hartnell looking displeased about the fact that he is being approached for a kids show.
Yeah.
Which is understandable because back in those days, becoming a kids show actor on television, yikes, that's your career over.
Yeah, because, kid shows are super unpopular and they're really bad. And this one is a science fiction, so it's really bad as well. We then get to the next scene where we are introduced to Sacha Dhawan's character, the Master, as he comes into the room. He monologues a bit about why he's really angry, that he discovered some information, and then he turns Verity Lambert into a toy. As far as I remember happening, I'm pretty sure that's what happened.
Took me a minute. Yeah, he's basically like, oh yeah, this script for the first story is utter shite.
It's really bad. They
and,
go ugh, ugh, ugh.
Yeah, the Stone Age men go ugh.
Which is a weird noise for the Daleks to make. I don't know why the Daleks in the first episode were going ugh, ugh, ugh.
Yeah.
That was a bad script.
This story is this biopic seems to make up an entire first episode for some reason about some teachers discovering Susan and then they go off and do caveman stuff. I don't understand what's going on here because on BBC iPlayer we just have a Daleks.
Just the
I don't
Daleks.
get it.
Yeah. I don't get it either. No sense. Makes no sense. But this is a fun scene. Sacha Dhawan is immediately great. There's a fun moment where he comes in like full of steam and stuff like that, and Verity Lambert is like cheeky towards him, and he gives her a look like, "Oh, okay, right, you're on the level. I get it." And that's when he sits down and relaxes. It's a fun little character beat.
Oh yeah, because he's in the same room as like a lot of people of color or people who are outsiders kind of relate to each other in that way, especially in the 60s where they can kind of be on the same level where we're just immediately calmed down by the presence of another outsider, which is what the next scene goes into, where Verity and Boris are at a bar and they're discussing, hey, we're both outsiders, we need to be in this together. We have a scene where the scene opens up on Boris Hussein looking at a man because he's a gay man in the 60s. And yeah, of course, it's the 60s. He can't be openly gay and a person of colour at the same time because that's career suicide, essentially, which is kind of still the case today, which is really sad. Really depressing stuff.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure if that happens, the world explodes. So that's why it doesn't happen.
But yeah, this scene coming up next is such a lovely scene, and of course Mark Gatiss is the gay man, so I presume he would have personal experience writing for a gay man, a closeted gay man, which, yeah, it's just really lovely stuff. The chemistry between the two of them are just so good. It's so well done.
It is. It's great. And I like Sacha Dhawan a lot. I want to see him in more stuff.
Yeah.
I know he's already been in a bunch that I've just somehow has missed me my entire life, but he needs to be in more things that I'm gonna watch specifically. Because he is great. But they decide to chat to William Hartnell, and we cut from one table to another as we go from them at the bar to them at a restaurant with Hartnell, where Hartnell is once again very rude and mean. And this is where he's getting pitched the idea of being the Doctor, and he wants to know everyone that's involved, but Verity is like, oh, I can't tell you everyone that'd be involved. We'd be here all day. And she screams that down the microphone as loud as she can,
and
so
she
everyone
winks
at home can hear
really
it.
hard.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is of course Mark Gatiss acknowledging the fact that he had to ignore a lot of people in the production of this show, and it is a nice little wink to the audience who are in the know. It's nice to just vaguely acknowledge them,
Yeah, it's a fun little bit of dialogue, and the way that they pitch the show is great. They describe what the TARDIS is and go into like that it's got this chameleon circuit thing that's broken, and they talk about who the Doctor is, how he's this hard ass, he's really unlikable, but there's a twinkle there where he's actually kinder and brighter than that, but it's like all an outer shell. And they tried to sell the idea to Hartnell and play to his ego a bit, because he doesn't want to be seen as the mean, angry dude that he's typecast as. So it's that twinkle that he keeps coming back to as to his reason for being the Doctor, which is it's a cute little character thing, you know?
Yeah. And it is nice to just watch how producers approach somebody to cast somebody in a role and try to butter them up and these kind of terminologies and explain the show to them. It's fascinating to just watch the process and process, I guess.
Yeah, it's it's watching somebody sell an item or a product, but it's a role. It's very interesting. And they also go into like how they made the TARDIS sound and got the intro credits and stuff like that by turning a camera onto its own monitor and running keys down whatever that wire was, a piano wire or violin or an instrument of some kind.
Piano wire.
Yeah.
Which is just the creativity they briefly show in this little montage. You're like, yeah, these people are so creative, and a lot of these sound effects, the theme song is still the same today. Like, it's so cool to think about. It's like just history. You're just watching history be made 60 years on, and we're still using the same sound effects and the music. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then we it ends on a joke, doesn't it? Where he's like, Doctor Who. Yeah, because he's like, what's the name of this guy? Doctor Who? Doctor Who? That's what he does. As he goes, as he gets into character and he puts his arms onto the side of his vest, and that's where we hear the first and it's beautiful. It's beautiful and definitely intentional.
Yeah. Apparently, the reason why William Hartnell does the thing where he hangs onto his coat in that way is because he thinks that on television you always need to see the actor's hands because that's part of the emoting process. So he finds a way to always have his hands in shot, which is interesting. It's really weird.
Yeah, I guess it's just one of those ritual things. But I mean, it does give him an aura. You know, he's not wrong. It does make you watch his performance because you're like, what is he doing with those hands? What his hands just like you know, it's an iconic look. It's an iconic look. I like it. The movie continues as we then get the like cast photo of Ian, Barbara, and Susan alongside the Doctor, and the doubles they've got for Ian, Barbara, and Susan are fine enough. They're like whatever. They are far from the worst, but like look-alike that they get in this. There's a really bad one. There's one that stands out like a sore thumb. But these three they're decent. They look similar enough to the roles where if you squint, you're like, I guess that's them.
And if you do something funny with your ears, like stick something in your ears, and you can only vaguely hear them, they sound alike almost, which is funny because they do wind up being their respective characters in Big Finish. They produce like 3 or 4 box sets with these 4 cast members as the original characters, which is kind of cool. I kind of like that idea.
That is fun.
Obviously.
That's weird and fun.
I do like these photograph segments. Every time we begin a new year, we have these photographs to just show William Hartnell's, like, you know, his disenchantment about the fact that everyone's leaving him and all that, like in 1964, 1965, 1966, etc. It's a really cool device, just like that repetition to just really get into William Hartnell's head. It's not something that happened in real life, but it's a nice little, it's a nice little addition. It's cool.
It is cool. As the only thing that they made up in this movie.
Oh yes,
They were allowed to make up one thing, and that was it. It's pretty cool. It's a pretty.
They also made up the fact that John F. Kennedy was assassinated, because in real life he, of course, wasn't assassinated. As a conspiracy theory by Stanley Kubrick. They filmed the assassination on the moon. And Stanley Kubrick directed it.
We then get a scene where Verity is asking for the TARDIS set to be built, but the guy is refusing to listen to her. And we then see Hartnell not being able to remember his lines, which is a recurring theme in both the movie and the show Doctor Who. It's very funny watching Hartnell stumble. Like, you could take a shot every time he stumbles over a line or flubs something in every single episode of Doctor Who. It's a trademark of his character.
My favorite thing is to watch the actors around him every time, and we're just like, "Oh God, Will, what the fuck? What do I do?"
Yeah. What do you mean? What? Yeah. Just, yeah. It's also this is I guess it's a sweet scene with the granddaughter where she's like, "What are you talking about? Do you have another granddaughter?" Because she's like an idiot. But it turns into this. It's a good look at like some foreshadowing of kids being immediately enamored with who the Doctor is, and what is Doctor Who about, and tell me everything about it. It's like he starts telling her about the TARDIS and the adventures and stuff he's going to be going on, and she's just completely like enamored and like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever. This is rad. As all of us were when we were indiscriminate child age watching Doctor Who.
Yeah, it's such a sweet little scene just to watch them two connect with Doctor Who, and it's about a man in a magical box, like a Jack in the Box, and the Doctor heals people. It's just really sweet. Like kind of like a misinterpretation about the show, but it's kind of accurate for like a child's lens. It's just really sweet.
Yeah. And then we get some more acting as we cut to a set rehearsal of the Doctor going over his lines with Ian and Barbara and still getting them wrong and, just generally messing them up, while Sacha Dhawan looks on very like, oh, I'm directing. As Verity Lambert joins them and they're like, things are meh. They're meh. Things are meh right now. That's the main takeaway. And they goes on after the scene where Hartnell's like, hey, I'm concerned right now about this. I wanna have a complaint because where's the TARDIS set? When is the TARDIS set getting built? Because I need to know all the buttons. I need to make sure I map out every button and I know what each one does, and so I don't make mistakes between episodes, which is a really cool and really sweet thing for Hartnell to be like wanting to do. Like, he wants to make sure he gets the buttons right because he knows kids are going to be looking out and they'll remember that thing. If only he cared about learning his lines. I
mean, to be fair on him, it was the disease, kind of like he wasn't diagnosed with the disease yet, but it was the disease.
It was being 100 years old. Being 100 years old was what really did him.
But yeah, I love the fact that, in real life, William Hartnell was the same way. He just cared so much about keeping things accurate. He wanted to learn everything about the TARDIS, which is really cool because, when you're a kid, you're like, how does this work? And you just pay attention to everything as a kid. You pay attention to the littlest things, really, that don't really matter to the story or anything. And it's really lovely, in Jodie's TARDIS, if something makes a biscuit, you're expecting it to be used in the future, and it never gets used again. like it makes custard creams in Jodie's TARDIS. Is that what happens?
Yeah, it does. It makes custard creams, or was it bourbons? I think it was custard creams. And you never see her eat. I don't even think you see her eat a biscuit again.
Yeah,
like I don't even
really
think
strange.
Even has a biscuit again. It's such a weird, like, this is a fun detail that we're never ever going to do. Like, she doesn't even offer it to someone and they say no. Like someone's sad and she's like, oh, custard cream, and then just hands it to them. Like, that would have been a fun Doctor moment.
Or if she's really in like exposition mode and she's like, oh, this is going on and this is going on,
just
and the Jaduna, she just pulls a lever and all of a sudden she's eating one.
No, that'd be fun. But during this scene, oh my God, what's his name? Jesus
Sidney
Christ. Sidney Newman walks by, and Verity Lambert takes this as a chance to be like, "Hey, I can get out of this conversation with Hartnell by calling him over." And Sidney Newman immediately butters up the doctor, like,
Yeah.
"Oh my God, you were in that show? What was that show you were in? That one. You were amazing in that one. You were phenomenal." And just like immediately just bombards Hartnell with
Yes.
compliments, and he's like, he doesn't even resist. He's like, "Oh, you're so nice. You're such a kind man. Thank you so much for saying that I was great. Yes, I was great."
Oh yeah, it's really wholesome because the way David Bradley plays it is his wee smile as he gets complimented on. It's really sweet and endearing. You just want to root for the guy, you know. It's really sweet.
It is really sweet and endearing, and it gives you, it like gives off this impression that while it is like ego like sucking, and that's what he's doing. He's trying to lift up his ego and big him up and stuff like that. But Hartnell, the way that Bradley is playing Hartnell, it's like he doesn't receive compliments for his acting a lot, you know. And to hear someone compliment his work, it's like, oh yes, no, I am proud of the stuff I do. I do like this job. That's right, I am good at what I do, and giving him that confidence boost after he's gone so long getting his lines wrong and things like that, you know. And incredible. It's a nice little subtle performance.
The vulnerable side to William Hartnell in this movie is like the most important side. You know, you really like, you just feel so terrible for the guy, and you just can't get the lines right or anything. It's just really sweet. It's a really sweet portrayal.
It is a really good, and it's incredible how much of a good job the movie does at making you empathize for Hartnell when the opening 2 scenes with him are him being an ass, you know, and yet you still go on to care about him. It's very, very, very well done. It's very cool. But as Sydney then walks away, and Verity is like, "Oh, thank you so much for diffusing that situation," and he immediately is no longer in butter up mode. He's in do your job, and is very short and snappy with Verity in a way that we've not seen him be before. And it's like an earth shock moment where, like, you know, it's that realization of, oh, I've got to do my job.
And it's a pun because just this morning Mathew watched Earthshock for the very first time, and you enjoyed it.
I did.
I'm surprised you enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was fine. Yeah, it was fine. It was like as boring as most other Classic Who episodes.
But
then
Verity really takes this to heart, Phil. It's really nice.
Yeah, she does, and we see that in the next scene when she storms into the set designer's office and is like, "Make me a TARDIS," and he just grabs like 6 items on his desk and is like, "There you go," and that's that whole scene. I feel like maybe this is a trimmed down scene that's been altered to fit the movie's framing device. I don't know. It would be amazing if this is how they designed the TARDIS. They're like 8 things on my desk. Here you go. I've done it. The TARDIS is ready now.
Yeah, it's probably something that she was pestering him about for multiple weeks. I mean, it probably took like a night. I would say a night to come up with a TARDIS design rather than 2 seconds.
Yeah.
That's insane.
But either way, it's a fun bit, and it does leads to a really nice transition, where it's this like top-down shot of the model of the TARDIS on the desk, and then it like blends into the actual constructed version of the TARDIS set, and goddamn, it's a nice looking set.
Oh,
it is a real nice looking set. I know we talked about it already, but top notch.
My question to you: would this be so much more impactful if we didn't already see it half an hour ago in the movie?
Yeah.
Like,
for sure. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Like
this
really
feels like a reveal. Like,
like I don't think you need that framing device at all in this movie. You could just start off in 1963 with Sidney Newman coming into the BBC office.
Yeah.
You don't need it, but I guess you need to open up your movie on the main star because William Hartnell doesn't show up for like 10-15 minutes into the movie.
Yeah, I guess. It's a rock and a hard place situation, isn't it? You know. Um, with this next scene with the TARDIS set is a really fun scene where we watch them try to shoot an episode of Doctor Who, where we have some fun light racism from the cameraman. It's way too hot in the studio. Nothing. They have 5 minutes to film before the lights go out. The cameras are all wrong. The doors start breaking down. The cavemen don't want to have their teeth painted, even though they're not in this scene at all.
It's the one thing that really throws me off, because the cavemen get introduced in the next episode. Like, you won't even see the caveman's teeth in this episode because it's just a shadow. It's really strange.
Yeah. But I think they make a point to that where Sacha Dhawan is like, does it matter because he's only a shadow? We don't need to paint his teeth. But I guess they painted his teeth even though he was just a shadow. Which is just, I mean, that's that great use of the Doctor Who budget on the BBC show, isn't it?
But yeah, a lot of these technical issues did happen in real life. The doors just went mental. William Hartnell drops his scarf on the floor. The way he plays the Doctor is a bit too harsh in the original pilot. A lot of these are accurate. The sprinklers going off isn't accurate, but apparently the sprinklers did go off during the shooting of the Aztecs. I'm not sure how factual that is, but you know, it is pretty accurate to how the first episode was shot and why they needed to reshoot it. Which I don't think they needed to reshoot it, because I've seen that original pilot multiple times and I think it's fine as it is. You know, it's fine.
But I like the things that they do change from it, I think are kind of instrumental into what the show turns into. You know, like fair. A pilot, as much as like a pilot for Eddie's show is always bad and always is always like a weird skeleton of the show you grow to love, and things like that. Like saying outright in the pilot, like the Doctor's from the 43rd century, the Doctor acts this way, like that completely changes the show like 3-4 years down the line when you need to regenerate. That now you need to come up with a different reason, you know, like and then now you've got a different show from Doctor Who. Just that one line completely changes everything that we know about the show. So it's interesting as to what could be if they never did change the pilot. Like, would Doctor Who even still continue? Would it even continue on? Who knows? Who knows what they would have done?
Yep, who knows indeed. I'm pointing at my nose.
Maybe he'd be a clone. Maybe he'd be a clone. Or from a multiverse. What if he's from a multiverse? Or he's got this one companion who looks into the heart of the TARDIS at one point, and then they become like a Dr. Donna thing. I don't know where the Donna. Maybe they're called Donna. And then the Doctor dies, but that companion regenerates and turns into the Doctor. Maybe that'll be a thing that happens.
Yeah, that's the thing. It is mental to think that William Hartnell and David Tennant are part of the same show. It's the same continuity. It's insane.
Yeah.
Just think, I've gone over this a million times. I cannot fathom how they are part of the same show, but yet it feels so natural. It's really strange.
It's a cool vibe. It's a cool aesthetic. It's just, you know, just a good time. It's just a good time. But we then get Sidney Newman watching the pilot, and he's like, hey, it was bad. You need to reshoot all those things that we listed off. And he tells them this as they watch him eat dinner at the restaurant because they were too rude to order food. They go to this restaurant a lot, and it's very rare they actually order anything from them. This is a very accommodating restaurant.
I mean, here it's like, I don't have any appetite because, you know, we could be losing our jobs here.
Yeah.
Sidney Newman is like, you could be losing your jobs. Like.
Yeah, but like even when they were interviewing Hartnell, like Hartnell's like, I don't want to eat, just drinks for me, pal. You know, they never eat in this place. Maybe the food's bad.
Maybe.
We then get a very, very wholesome scene, and it's the first of many. I guess it's maybe the second or third wholesome scene, but there's a lot of wholesome scenes in this movie, and this is one of them with Hartnell and Verity, where she's like, everything you did was great, and I let you down, because Hartnell's blaming himself for them having to reshoot this pilot, and she's like, no, like, I wasn't listening to the notes you were giving me. Like, the Doctor needs to be kind. He needs to have that spark you were talking about that we forgot about, and you were completely right about everything. And she's now buttering up Hartnell like she had watched Sydney do so beautifully, but it feels less obvious, and it feels way more real and way more honest than what Sydney. Like, Sydney was clearly manipulating the man to chill him out, whereas this feels earnest, and it's lovely. It's a really nice little conversation.
Sydney is portrayed as like a used car salesman. Like, he is just buttering people up for the sake of buttering people up, whereas Verity seems to have genuine empathy for William Hartnell in this scene. It's so touching. I love the relationship throughout this movie. It's just really nice.
It is very nice, and heartbreaking as well at times. Heartbreaking as well.
God, yes.
They reshoot the pilot and it's good. Yeah.
Yeah, they reshoot the pilot and it's good, but also the ending is the ending to episode 4 of An Unearthly Child for some reason. I mean, at the end of a scene, we're like, oh yeah, there's a new script coming in.
I guess they just shot the whole story.
And then the next scene is like, oh yeah, we got a new story coming in. Terry Nation is writing the Daleks. It's about these robot people. And it's like, okay, well, I would be shooting next week if we just shot episode 4 of An Unearthly Child. Like, it's really weird. It's a really weird choice.
Yeah, it is strange. It is a strange choice, but I maybe they only had so many clips they could show per episode or whatever. Like, who knows how anything works? Not me. But it's important as well to mention when they talk about the Daleks things, because what was one of the rules that Sidney Newman definitely had? No robots, no bug-eyed monsters. And a Dalek, while not being a robot in the technical sense, is essentially a robot. And they pick up the script being like, hey, no, it's a really good script, you'll love it. And he's like, well, okay, I guess I'll read the script and I will decide if this is going to be something that we include in Doctor Who. So the fate of the Daleks rests on Sidney Newman's shoulders, and as we all know, he hated them so much the Daleks never got made, and we never know or what the Daleks could have been, if they made this mysterious monster in the show Doctor Who. But maybe he was right to have cancelled them. Maybe they were just bad. Robots in a sci-fi show? I don't know, man.
Oh yeah, just the idea of doing a sci-fi show and whoever it was thinking, I don't want any bug-eyed monsters, I don't want any robots, I just want cavemen and historical figures.
Yeah,
boring as fuck.
I just want to be on Earth. I just want to be on Earth, and I just want to be in the past. That's all I want to be. You want to be a period piece? No, I want to be a sci-fi show.
I bet whoever said that was like, okay, maybe having bugs, have butterflies running around.
Yeah.
Make it 6 parts. Perfect. This scene does end with Verity turning to Warris saying, Braveheart, darling, which is a reference to the 5th Doctor quote. We would often say Braveheart Tegan to Tegan, which is a nice little reference here,
Yeah, that's cute.
And then as Warris and Verity leave the room, it cuts to the... Actually, that's a good point. That's a good reason why they actually show episode 4 here, because it's the TARDIS monitor reading, going from safe to danger as we walk out the room. Like, this shit is getting more dangerous for us.
And then the next scene is him reading the Dalek script.
That's a completely valid change.
Yeah, no, that's cute. That's really good. That makes sense. That's a good observation, but it's not historically accurate. 0 out of 10.
And you know what else isn't historically accurate before we get into this? When John F. Kennedy was shot, I almost said when John Nathan Turner was shot. When John F. Kennedy was shot, they were already like 3 or 4 episodes into shooting the Daleks. Like, Sidney Newman was not reading the script to the Daleks. That's insane. But it's a nice dramatic effect that we're going to get into here.
So the next scene we get is one of my favorite scenes. I think it's really cut well together montage of Sidney Newman reading what the Daleks are, as we cut back and forth between like a gun and various parts of the Daleks and things like that, as he's like reading off the descriptions of like their eye socket and their like laser pistol thing that they have on their arm, and things like that. And when he's like exterminate, and it goes bang, exterminate, bang, exterminate, bang, which is both a fun homage, I think, to the Daleks being like Nazis and things like that, because it's like a it has World War II vibes, that gun. I don't know why, but also a fun homage to a certain president becoming no longer having a top of his head.
Yeah, so this is of course intercutting with the assassination of John F. Kennedy, as we discussed. And yeah, obviously we do a thing here where the Daleks would have been shooting episode 4 by this point, or episode 3 by this point, so it doesn't really make that much sense, but it works. It really works, because this is the first idea Mark had for this film, intercutting the creation of the Daleks with the extermination of John F. Kennedy, I guess.
Yeah. Did Sidney Newman kill John F. Kennedy?
like the both of us talk about coincidences whenever we mention somebody, and they either get cancelled or they die.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we mention a name on this podcast, and it just happens that way. John F. Kennedy was murdered by Sidney Newman.
Well, they did have like a breakthrough in the JFK assassination very recently, if I remember correct. There was like some new evidence or something uncovered like that. I remember reading it on so maybe they were about to discover Sidney Newman was the mastermind behind it all.
Mulder and Scully have been investigating this since 1993, you know.
Yeah,
like the psychic murder of John F. Kennedy.
And somehow Mark Gatiss knew about it and tried to warn us all. Of course, the first episode of Doctor Who airs a day after the assassination of JFK, which really upsets Hartnell, because he's like, no one's going to give a shit about my show because everyone's going to be too worried about the murder of the United States president, which I guess is fair. Like, earth-changing news, and also the president got assassinated. There's two things going on. You can only really focus on one.
And in real life, of course, the program did get bad viewers at this point, but part of the reason was because part of England, a significant portion of England, had a power cut during this time, so obviously they couldn't view BBC One or BBC TV as it was known at the time, and so that's the main reason why Doctor Who got a repeat the following week, which was very, very rare in the 60s to get a repeat of your program. Like, it's insane to think about. Just and obviously that's why a lot of Doctor Who was destroyed, burned in a fire, because nobody's going to want to watch this. In 60 years' time, who's going to want to watch old Doctor Who?
That's true. Nobody. Perhaps because it's bad. They knew it was bad then, it's bad now.
But to show the fact that they got a repeat, it's better to focus on the John F. Kennedy assassination, because that's more visual of a thing rather than half a country got power cut. Yeah. Who cares? Who the fuck cares?
Also, like, it's like, he did die the day before the episode aired, so like it would be such a major thing to not mention in this movie at all, and instead focus on, oh no, there was a power cut. Actually, that's the main reason. That's what we're talking about. Like, it would be this huge glaring, why did you avoid the JFK assassination? What does this mean? Was Sidney Newman involved? But Sydney has been told that he must cancel Doctor Who and fire Verity, and so he brings her into his office and he's like, "Hey, I promoted you too soon, and you're doing all the things in the show I didn't want you to do, and blah blah blah." And Verity's like, "You didn't read the Dalek script. I'm going to yell it at you instead," which convinces him that maybe Doctor Who should stay on the air and he'll pull some strings to keep it going a little while longer. And by gosh, it's what the show needs to become a hit. Y'all, isn't that lucky? Just that one last attempt.
I think this is one of the scenes where my mind kind of thinks that some of the changes they make to real life doesn't work, because the controller of the BBC comes in, who is played by Mark Eden, by the way, who played Marco Polo in the William Hartnell story Marco Polo. So it's nice for him to finally get on screen in Doctor Who, because Marco Polo is completely wiped out. So this is his pretty much one acting role in Doctor Who that he can actually watch, which is lovely to see. But him coming in saying, "Oh yeah, after you've done these 4 episodes, you're cancelled," which is ridiculous, because again, we're halfway through the Daleks at this point, and in real life, it was, let's give you 13 episodes after the Edge of Destruction, and we'll decide if you're cancelled or not. And also the Daleks came through and became huge not overnight, but like by episode 3 or 4, it became huge, So the idea of 4 episodes is a bit ridiculous for me. I can't believe it. It takes me out of the moment a little bit.
Yeah, I can understand that completely. We're gonna have to pause for like 5 seconds. I have just cut my hand.
How the fuck did you do that?
So like the arms on my computer chair are like wearing out. Like I need either a new chair or some new covers. And like they're wearing out to the part where you can feel the like nail poking through the arm. And I had my hand resting, and I just kind of slid it across my seat, and now I have a big gash down the palm of my hand that is bleeding. So I should probably, rinse it out and get a plaster on it.
Nightmare.
The scene begins as we get the reveal of the Dalek construction outfit. What do you call this? I guess it's technically like a costume. If somebody is inside it. But calling it a Dalek costume feels
prop?
weird. A prop, maybe?
It's a bit of a prop, it's a bit of a costume.
Yeah. It's a weird one. But it's cool. And the camera angles they get with them are kind of fun. I like the first person but it's not first person of the Dalek, it's first person of the person riding the Dalek. So it's through the neck instead of through the eye, and everything's awful and you can barely see anything. It's a really cool perspective that we've not really seen before. Also, I'd like to drive a Dalek.
Yeah.
It looks like a nightmare. It looks like a nightmare, and I get claustrophobic pretty easily. But I'd quite like to ride that Dalek. I mean, I wouldn't like to ride I'd like to be inside. I don't want to. Wait, hang on.
Okay. Which part
do I want to fuck a Dalek?
Do you want to ride? There's the plunger, there's the whisk, and there's the eye stalk. Which part are you feeling more adventurous about today?
All three, baby. All three.
Well, yeah, it is cool that we get these new perspective shots of the Daleks, and it gives you a little hint about what it does look like to be inside a Dalek. And I agree, as a tall person, I agree with you on the claustrophobic part, because yikes. I can just imagine my legs cramping as hell.
Well, they probably wouldn't ever put you in a Dalek. That's the thing. You probably need to be short to be a Dalek. You'd end up playing like a
Yeti or
I don't know, like a Cyberman, and some big monster, some big monster they see, because that's what you are in real life. It's a big monster, big monster freak. We then see them shoot the Doctor Who episode with the Daleks, and it's fun. The Daleks seem they do a really good job of making the Daleks seem fucking incredible in this movie, which of course, I mean, they are in real life. The Daleks are great, but we've been exposed to the Daleks so many times that eventually they lose the magic a little bit.
Yeah.
But when you can get that, when you suddenly feel that Dalek magic come back, it's like, it's exciting. You're like, oh yeah, the Daleks are awesome. Yeah, you're right. They're so cool. I love the Daleks. The movie does a great job of showcasing that.
And it's cool because we're keeping it accurate to the original story from the 60s, which, in my opinion, is a little bit old and dusty. It's still effective to a certain point, but the Daleks themselves aren't intimidating in that story, in my opinion. But we're keeping it accurate to the original story while also finding new ways of making them intimidating, because these are the old dusty props, and they look really good here, and it just really works. It really works. And it's also just fascinating to see what it looks like to actually film Doctor Who in the 60s, because you and I kind of have a similar experience of like shooting something in this way, because I don't know if the audiences know, but you and I went to college together, and part of our college assignments was, let's do multicam, and we wound up shooting something that was very much like this. I don't know if you remember, but I directed you in like a movie quiz show, which was a lot of fun.
I remember because I was the host of that show,
yes.
And if I do say so myself, I fucking nailed it.
Yes.
I was just firing off fucking trivia tidbits left and right. I'm just improvising like crazy. I remember being like, I'm doing a good job right now.
Yeah. My heart. Actually, I think I explicitly made you the host of it because you are a funny, natural guy. You're charismatic. Because if it was me, I'd be stumbling all over the place. But yeah, we had like 3 rehearsals, and then we actually shot it live, basically, which was a lot of fun, but it was very stressful, and I cannot imagine doing 40 episodes of television a year like that, sitting in a stuffy old room.
It is not how I like to do things at all. You have to, like, when you're doing single cam directing, you can really focus in on making every shot perfect and making sure every line is delivered the right way and everything is set up exactly how you want to do it. And it takes forever, but it's a way more delicate procedure. Multicam, you're juggling 15 things at once and you're yelling at everybody, and it sucks. Because if you miss it once, you have to restart so many things.
Yeah, it is so difficult to just have, cut to camera 1, camera 2, camera 3, while also trying to pay attention to, like, the performances. I can't imagine that.
Yeah.
It's insane. And also, Titan camera 2. Like, what the fuck? That's insane. Like this stuff is only used for, like, maybe soap operas nowadays, and also, live television programs. That's basically it. But to shoot science fiction this way, insane.
Yeah, like a drama, like a serious. This is how we shoot TV. Ridiculous.
And it just makes you respect these people so much more for what they were able to do on such a outdated way of shooting things. It's insane.
Yeah. After they shoot the Dalek episode, we get to see the immediate reaction to people watching the Dalek episode, because of course they shoot these episodes a day before they air, so it's a very quick turnaround. And we see this random lady who I've never seen anywhere before do anything come out and yell.
It's her voice we hear. Carol Ann Ford screams, "Your program's on," because we see a street full of kids playing outside, and it's tea time, and Doctor Who is on. So everybody come in. The Doctor Who is on. It's fun.
Yes. Doctor Who is on, and your tea is getting cold. Do they get to eat their tea? I don't know. Maybe it was cold and ruined, and they had to go to bed without any dinner or watching their new Doctor Who program because they didn't come in. That's possible.
God, I do wonder what they ate in 1963. What was for tea? Like chicken dinosaurs? Probably not, right?
If I was in 1968, I would imagine that my dinner was probably a variation on mashed potato and sausage.
Yeah, pretty much.
With gravy.
Yeah, sounds like it. Yeah.
Yeah. I imagine that's probably what it was. We then get a fun scene of Hartnell watching the Dalek episode with his granddaughter, and he flubs a line where he says to get the gloves or whatever the fuck, and immediately corrects himself, but that's the version that airs on TV, and his granddaughter picks up on it, but justifies it in her head as to why he would say gloves. There's no way that he could make a mistake. That wouldn't make sense. The Doctor doesn't make mistakes, so he must have said gloves for a reason there. That was planned out, and she justifies it as in, like, they need to touch the Daleks with gloves because they're radiation or something like that. It's a dumb reason, and she should feel bad for thinking it. But Hartnell goes along with the idea, and it's just that fun idea of, like, oh, like, even if I get the lines wrong, it's okay because the magic isn't ruined. The magic's still there with the show.
Because,
it's awesome.
Because when we were kids watching Doctor Who, we didn't pay attention to, like, plot holes or, oh yeah, this script is bad or these companions are bad or whatever. Like, we were just completely sucked into the universe. Like, we didn't pay attention to any mistakes or whatever. Like, it's really good for them to just capture the imagination of a child, because that's what Doctor Who is. You have to use your imagination. Like, a lot of people report that when we watched Tomb of the Cybermen in 1960 whatever, it was so much more scarier than when we watched it in the 90s, because their imagination just kept them carried away. Like, just imagination of kids is amazing.
Yeah, and it's especially when you're seeing something you've never seen before, you know. So when you're like a kid watching it in the 60s, you know, TV's still pretty new. You know, TVs have only been around for a couple decades. They are still pretty new, and seeing special effects on TV and these robots on TV, and you know, like, this is all new stuff that you've not seen before, and it's terrifying and exciting. And then by the time when you watch it again in the 90s, like, you know, you got the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in the 90s. You've seen everything, you know, like, that's it. That's the peak. There's no new ideas after the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That was where society was at its top. So nothing's ever going to live up to that moment when you were a kid and everything was new.
Or
so
Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles. As
Hero Turtles,
UK,
yeah. Although I've only ever known them as ninjas, because I am
same.
not old enough to be around when they were heroes. Just dastardly ninjas. We then get a scene where Sydney tells Verity that, hey, it got 10 million viewers, well done, you're so great, and the show can continue, well done, 5 stars, good job. And it's a very nice moment in the movie where everyone is happy and successful. And it's just, this movie does a great job of making you just feel good. It's just a wholesome time. It's just people being happy, and it's like, oh yeah, no, nice, it was a success, awesome, brilliant.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of that scene from That Thing You Do, the Tom Hanks movie, where they spend the entire movie trying to get their song on the radio, and they keep listening to the radio, waiting for their song to play, and the moment it starts playing, everybody's just running around, dancing, so excited. It's like the most joyful scene in cinematic history. It's really lovely. And yeah, it just reminds me of this.
Never seen that movie.
It's very good. It's so good.
Don't think so, pal. Then Verity, she passes the news on to the Master, and he's very excited because he's like, oh my god, yes, in 60 years time I'm going to be able to take over the TARDIS and destroy the Time Lords again and turn them all into Cybermen. And then we flash forward.
I do feel so sorry for Roris Hussein at this moment, because Marco Polo is completely wiped out from existence, and now people can't watch An Unearthly Child. His only 2 contributions to Doctor Who is now unable to be viewed on BBC iPlayer. You must be so upset right now on this day. Like, I feel so bad for the guy.
Yeah.
Like, that's such a shitty move.
Yeah, that sucks. Maybe one day they'll animate Marco Polo. If it,
Hopefully,
and then,
that'd be lovely.
And then they can stick that up.
Yeah,
but
hopefully they get the rights to An Unearthly Child, because it's just such a bullshit thing for that son.
It's so dumb. It's ridiculous.
Ugh, what a shithole.
What you gonna do? People gonna people, baby. We get some back-to-back wholesome scenes here where the Doctor shows a political cartoon that features a Dalek to Verity, and he's like, "Oh, look, they love us. People like we're relevant." And we see them shooting the scene in Marco Polo in this very elaborate Chinese set, and Hartnell is a bit rude to Susan, and he's like, you shouldn't waste your money. You don't know how long acting's going to last, etc., etc. And, trying to impart wisdom, but coming off as rude.
Yeah.
And then we see in the next scene, like, he sends her flowers and an apology. Like, he may be, like, an ass, but he isn't a complete ass, and he can apologize and admit when he was at fault sometimes, probably, perhaps. And it's wholesome. It makes you like the guy.
Yeah,
it's he's redeeming himself playing the role.
It feels very reminiscent of, the real life Bill and Carol, because they were so close in real life. Like, they were pretty much grandfather and grandchild in real life. So it's lovely that we get a little bit of that representation here, because Carol Ann Ford is a character in this movie. Isn't really a character, but it's nice to just
like
get
Susan.
these little...
It's just like Susan. Just like Susan. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is nice though. I do agree with what you're saying. Just those nice little character bits. You know, they don't need to take up huge moments, but they're just these little droplets throughout the movie that make you care. We then get Hussein's going away party. I guess it's I don't know what it is. Is it like two things? Is it going away party, or is it like a celebration of Doctor Who doing well, or is it both? Because they're like reading Doctor Who scripts, but
Maybe
they're
it's
also saying
both.
goodbye to Sacha Dhawan. So I don't know what it is. I guess it's just a party for the sake of having a party.
Which is like a party while you also have like 6 weeks of doing this television show. If I was part of that cast, I'd be like, fuck no, I'm going home. I'm trying to study these lines for tomorrow because we're going to be here all week trying to shoot this episode.
Yeah. But this was the 60s, there was no health and safety. There was no real rules. It was, we'll drink and we'll smoke all night and then we'll wake up and we'll shoot the show, whatever. We did it, shit. Who gives a fuck? No one's watching. And then everyone in the country was watching. We then get a cute scene where they show off Dalek Halloween costume that you can get for 66 pence and 6 halfpence or something. Like, it's like the number of the beast is the cost for this Dalek costume. But it's a cute enough scene, and it's just, there's a lot of cute scenes. I feel like a broken record. There's just back-to-back cuteness at the minute. It's good.
Yeah, it's really adorable stuff, We also get the scene where
the annual.
Yeah, or also Bill and Heather on a bench. I've lost the chronology of these scenes.
I think it's the annual first, and then it's the bench.
So the artwork for the annual was actually paid for by Mark Gatiss because it just wasn't in the budget, so he paid for it himself, which he says was a big mistake because that was a lot of money.
I imagine so. It's a really good picture. Like, it's a really good recreation of the Doctor Who annual to make the first Doctor look like oh my god, David Bradley? One of them.
Bradley.
It's one of those ways. Yeah, 2 first names. And it's brilliant. It's such a good piece of art. It's such a good piece of art. Big fan. But of course, it plays into Hartnell feeling like he's irreplaceable, which makes the oncoming change that is coming even more tragic when he can't be the role anymore. Like, he loves being Doctor Who so much. It's both lovely and sad. Lovely and sad.
Yeah, and then of course we get the scene with Bill and Heather on a park bench, and we get approached by this little boy called Alan who really wants an autograph from Uncle Who, and it's just really sweet. And then once they're finished talking to Alan, it's like, oh shit, there's like 30
There's
kids here. You just snuck off on us.
Yeah, and it's a cute scene where he starts playing with all the kids and like pretending they're on a Doctor Who adventure and stuff like that, and it's just wholesome. The scene where he gives Alan the autograph, I don't know if he could have fake signed that paper any worse. Like, is when he signs it does not for an instant look like he's writing an autograph down. It's like he's like, oh, I'm going to pretend to scribble something right now. There you go. But I guess Alan was happy enough for it. And it is a cute scene to show. Imagine being a child in the 1960s and William Hartnell with no teeth is your hero. What a weird time. What a strange time in history, but it's cool. It's cool.
Oh, God,
Not all heroes need to be action hero John Wicks, and sometimes they can be old men who don't know what they're saying. It's brilliant.
True words inspired by.
We then get some iconic looking shots where we see the Daleks outside Westminster, and we see the scene of them making the scene of the Daleks going outside Westminster, which is in itself its own scene of the Daleks outside Westminster. It's very cool.
They've recreated this shot multiple times. One of the times was the documentary 30 Years in the TARDIS, where Mark Gatiss was inside one of the Dalek costumes. So it's kind of nice that it comes full circle here. And it's just such an iconic shot. Just seeing these Daleks roam London is incredible. It's like when I went to London last year, it's all I could think of. Like, the Daleks were here. Like, holy shit.
I have never been to London, so I have never had that thought, and never will.
Wow.
Never will.
Because
if I was in London, the last thing I'm going to think about is the Daleks. That'd be too scary. Like, oh no, what if the Daleks show up? I want to try and forget that they exist, because the Daleks do exist. They so.
I mean,
I'd rather not be scared.
Actually, I guess we should go to Cardiff at some point when they're filming Doctor Who. Go for like
Cardiff?
2 weeks.
That's even worse. There's a rift in Cardiff, and you could get turned into an alien.
No,
I don't know what the rift does. It does whatever. Like,
it sends through aliens from other dimensions, but the rift
it does whatever.
The rift is canonically closed by the ghost of Yanto Jones from Torchwood, so that's long gone.
But what if it opens again? What if it opens when they bring in Torchwood 2? With the new spin-offs that are coming.
With Mickey Smith? No, wait, you can't do that. With Martha Jones? Oh, Christ.
Yeah. We then get a scene where Hartnell is very rude to a guy who just wants to do some acting with him, and he's like, no, fuck off, I don't want to do acting with you. And then he sits down next to Susan, and he's very sad that she's going to be leaving as they shoot her final episode, which we have covered on the podcast.
No, we haven't.
Or we did it we did the movie. We
Yes.
did the movie, which is the same story.
We haven't
But
covered
I've
anything with the original Susan in it, which is wild. We haven't done the
That's
first
wild.
10 stories.
Yeah, that is god damn. There's too much Doctor Who. But it's a really solid episode. Like, the original story itself is really solid.
Yeah.
I've seen it. The Doctor Who movie is fine. It's a good enough time as well. But this is just adds that extra bit of humanity to it, where you see that Hartnell was genuinely sad that she was leaving. And didn't want her to go, but she wanted to move on to bigger and brighter things and didn't just want to scream all the time. And so we then get the scene.
And of course, when she moved on to do bigger, brighter things, she was amazing in that one movie where she played a lady and she did stuff.
Yeah.
Remember that movie?
Yeah, I don't know.
Big hit.
I love that one. Yeah. Yeah, James Bond, where she was James Bond. But Hartnell, that we then cut to the scene where Hartnell is filming his iconic farewell speech, which is really, it's probably Hartnell's most definitive speech. Like, it's the one, if you're using a clip of his Doctor, that's probably the clip you're going to see, is him giving that speech, because it is some of the best performances that Hartnell has ever given is in that episode and that scene specifically.
I know they even played at the end, so it's even more noticeable that David Bradley's performance in recreating this scene isn't as good. It's missing something. It's missing that kind of warmth to it, I think.
Which is fair, because I guess it just shows how good of a performance it was, that it's so hard to recapture that magic off. Like Hartnell, like it's something that like only Hartnell could really convey.
Yeah.
And as much flaws as he had as an actor, he could bring it when he needed to. And it was, he was a solid time as the Doctor, albeit an inconsistently solid one.
Oh God,
it's solid with some holes. But I think David Bradley does a decent job. Like he does a good job of capturing somewhat of the feel. It's just some of his line delivery, I think, it doesn't have the same impact. It's hard to really pinpoint what it is. Maybe it's just down to the direction of the scene is different than how it was. I don't know. No idea. It doesn't have that feeling that Hartnell managed to get. Kudos to Hartnell.
Yeah, I've always felt weird about David Bradley as the first Doctor because I prefer him as William Hartnell. Like, there's just something about his performance as the first Doctor which doesn't quite hit for me. It's just one of those things I'm not sure. I'm not an actor myself, so I don't know what the kind of difference he's making.
Yeah, I like him as the first Doctor. I think he brings. Where like Hartnell is a product of his time and could only exist really as the Doctor in the 60s. What I think David Bradley does well is make the first Doctor more modern. Like he presents the first Doctor in a way that feels like it's from the 60s, but to a presentable for a modern Doctor Who audience. So there are changes in the performance in the way that he delivers lines. Like he doesn't flub his lines, like he says his lines properly. He does.
I kind of wish he did flub
say
his lines well.
Yeah, like he doesn't say every second sentence because he's trying to remember what he has to say. And he's too perfect. Like Hartnell's Doctor is rough around the edges, whereas his Doctor is more clean cut and more like this is just a competently performed piece. And this isn't the shambolic nature that is the first Doctor's era, and maybe that's what it's missing. It's just missing that almost improvisational aura of you could say anything right now that Hartnell brings.
Yeah, you make some very good points there. The parts that I heard anyway, because you kept cutting in and out, but I think I got the gist of it. It's very good.
You're breaking the illusion because I wasn't cutting in and out in the recording, so you're breaking the illusion here.
I don't care. We're covering a biopic, so we might as well do some behind the scenes stuff about the show we're doing. Make a biopic about our podcast, please. Why don't you?
We'll do a podcast about making a podcast about making a podcast.
Sounds amazing. I want to do that. By the way, now it's 1965.
The wee movie continues on as Hartnell is continuing. I'm losing my voice. We have been recording for that long. As Hartnell is struggling to remember his lines as I am struggling to talk. And it's a sweet, albeit tragic scene of him going over the lines with his wife, and she's very supportive and lovely. And, she's like, maybe do you want to give it up? And, you're getting older and you've been doing this a while and it's a hard workload. And he's like, no, there's too many kids that rely on me. There's too many kids that need to see Doctor Who and love the show, and I can't let them down. So I'm going to have to power through. I'm going to have to do this, which just, it goes, and this last little bit of the movie as well really goes on to hammer home how much Hartnell loved and cared about the show and how much he didn't want to go. Oh, that's some foreshadowing of my own right there.
But what I like about this scene is the wife kind of, Heather kind of goes through with him, like a couple of lines, and then it just lights out. They go through like one line.
She gets bored. She gets bored quick. She's like, okay, we'll go over this one conversation. Okay, right. Good night. There's a really good scene of Hartnell looking in the mirror, and in the mirror you can hear Daleks being like, I can't understand what he's saying. He's mumbling his lines, or what, like he's just making stuff up, and things like that. Of the monster themselves being unable to hear what Hartnell's saying, and it's just cool to hear the Daleks talk in a way that it's not Dalek-y,
Yeah. But yeah, obviously his health is getting worse, and this is the part where everybody's crying. Everybody knows what's coming up because they know what's coming up is the Web Planet, and
Bumblebee
everybody
Man.
is
Yeah.
so sad by that.
Yes. As the next scene we get is Verity meeting up with, what did you say the wife's name was? Heather. And she goes on to explain that Hartnell has got his heart's arteries are hardening up. And it's affecting his health in many, many different ways. And, she doesn't know how much longer he's going to be able to continue on doing Doctor Who. And then a giant bee man attacks them. As they're having this conversation on the set of the Web Planet. And it's a really bad story. The Web Planet sucks massively. It's one of the worst Doctor Who stories I've ever watched in my life.
It's something I can appreciate for the costumes and the sets. I know you don't like the costumes or the sets, but I can appreciate it for that. But the story itself, after all the scenes inside of the TARDIS, is absolute garbage. It's just, bug people flying around and going, Zarby, Zarby. It's terrible.
It is really not good. We continue on, and we get some more scenes of Hartnell flubbing his lines and messing up recordings and stuff like that. And he gets into a big argument where he's like, I don't need these lines, I can do this with a look. They used to say that, we don't need to give Hartnell lines. He can do things with a look. Just give him a look. He's that good. And he goes to Verity to try and get some backup and to have somebody that he can vent to. And she sits and listens and agrees with him. And he's like, oh, thank you. I'm so glad you have my back. I'm so glad you're never going to leave the show, Verity. I'm so glad you're going to be here with me forever and ever and ever. Anyway, what is it you needed to tell me? As we then cut to Verity's goodbye party. It's a sad scene. It's some fun structure.
It's absolutely heartbreaking. It's like the last fabric of his work life is about to leave. Like his one last remaining hope is just gone now, and it's just so sad. Some fun cameos though in this scene. If you go to 103:55. You can see Jean Marsh and Anarchy Wills at the party. They are the two older ladies inside of the room. Jean Marsh played Sarah Kingdom in the Daleks' Master Plan. And you can also... Anarchy Wells played Polly in the 10th Planet. We just covered that recently. Last year. Time flies. But yeah, those two women make cameos here. And there's going to be a deleted scene with Jean Marsh, played by Sarah Kingdom. They were going to recreate her death scene in the Daleks' Master Plan, where so the way she dies is somebody fires a gun at her, and it's like an aging gun, so she gets incredibly old, and they were going to recreate that scene with an older
that's fun.
Jean Marsh, which would have been so much fun, but it just wasn't in the budget to do it, which is sad, because that sounds like so much fun.
Yeah, that does sound like fun.
Sorry, and also Donald Tosh, the last surviving Hartnell script editor, is also in the scene behind them. I think he's directly behind the lady with the beehive hair.
Right, interesting.
So yeah, some fun cameos here.
Yeah, that's cool. And it's always strange, like even with the man who plays Ian. I'm so bad with names today. Sometimes I'm good with
William
them.
Russell.
Who's the man that plays him? Yeah, William Hartnell, who plays Ian. It's always strange to me seeing them in modern day, kicking about and doing stuff, because I think of Hartnell's era as so long ago in the past.
Yeah.
60 years is a really long time, but it's also not that long at all. and
Yeah.
everybody that was, is very recent history, but it's like just because it's way before my time, and because it's in black and white, and just everything about it, the way it was produced, the way it was made, the technology it was on, it's all so backwards to how things are now. It feels like a different world, and just being like, oh wait, hang on, that person that was working on it is still, that's them now. They don't even look that old. What? That's crazy. It's fun.
Yeah, because I was watching Newsnight last night because they had a Doctor Who segment about political stuff. And Andrew Hartnell was one of the interviewees. He was the script editor from like 1988 to 1989. And he was in it, and he looks so young because he's only like 50 odd. But yeah, 1989 feels like a million years ago because you and I weren't born then. It's insane.
Yeah. But it wasn't that long ago. But time is cruel, and soon we'll be looking back at 2005 Doctor Who as if it was 20 years ago.
Oh God.
That's coming real soon. Soon. But for us, it feels like yesterday. Isn't that crazy? Gee whiz. We get a fun scene with Sydney giving a speech about Verity, which is really a speech about himself. And then we get a really heartbreaking scene with Verity and Hartnell, where she's like, hey, are you gonna go? And obviously she knows he's ill at this point, and he's like, no, I'm gonna be here for years and years and years. And she like gives a look where she like turns away. She's like, oh god, sadness. But it then gets like a sweet bit where she gets like some wine on her lipstick, or some lipstick smudges because of the wine. I'm not quite sure what's going on, but there's a mess on her face, and Hartnell like cleans it off, and it's just it's a sweet little goodbye between the last remaining person that cared about Doctor Who as much as Hartnell.
And
from that original guard.
This is a part of the movie I remember where the tears started flowing from my eyes. Like the first time I watched it, like I was trying to hold it in the entire time. And then just the scene happens, and it's so tender and it's so sweet, and she gives him a little kiss on the cheek, and it's just so lovely. And it's just heartbreaking, man.
It is heartbreaking stuff. And we then transition into basically the last scene in the movie, and where it's a new era, there's new companions, and Hartnell's even more grumpier than he's ever been before. And he's at the TARDIS control desk, and setting things up, and he's arguing with the director, who calls him Bill, and he's like, you can call me Mr. Hartnell once you get to, see if you stick around on my show. And the TARDIS isn't working, and he's the only one that can fix it and set things up, and things are just, the magic's not there anymore. It's not the same people.
And the director is Mark Gatiss making a cameo, because of course Mark Gatiss makes a cameo in his own written work.
Why not? He loves acting.
Yeah, he's never too distracting, apart from when he gives Dracula an iPad.
I never watched Dracula because you said it was bad, so I've
The
never
first
seen
two
it because of you.
episodes. The first two episodes are really good, and then the third one is Dracula in the modern day, and he has an iPad, and the Wi-Fi password is Dracula. It's really terrible.
That sounds great. I don't know. That sounds pretty good. But during this scene, under the lights and the camera lens and things like that, Hartnell forgets his lines, and he can't say them, and he just eventually ends up not being able to put together a sentence, and I'm about to sneeze, until he just walks off set.
Bless you.
Oh, there we go. Until he just walks off all angry and upset. And then we cut again to another new era, and Hartnell looks even more out of it. Like, he looks like a ghost. He's just staring dead-eyed into that camera as it takes his photo. And Sydney and producer man, who's about my boy, they're like, we have to get rid of Hartnell. He's too old. He can't keep up with the workload anymore. We need to find a way to keep Doctor Who going. And Sydney has a bright idea of how to do that. because he comes up with regeneration on the spot, I guess, in this movie
Yeah.
immediately. Yeah,
That's the thing. I can't remember who actually came up with regeneration, but I don't imagine it was like that. But I do like the fact that we acknowledge the fact that William Hartnell was getting really hard to work with around this time, and he is. The scene just prior, he's like, well, "This is my show," which we discussed in the 10th Planet. He was totally like that, which made him so hard to work with. But at the same time, this biopic really makes you understand where he's coming from. Like, they do such a good job of making you empathize with this man, this grouchy old man. It's just it's just a nice little portrayal of William Hartnell here.
It humanizes him in a way that I had never seen or read about before, and which is why it made me want to go back and watch some more Hartnell era stuff, because I was like, oh wait, hang on, maybe I can see past the hums and the boring plots and the insane pacing and things like that, and appreciate it for what it is with this context of like who Hartnell was and some of the behind the scenes, even if the truth is stretched a bit. But you know, it's still bad episodes. We get a very nice scene with Hartnell and his granddaughter, where she is like, hey, you're gonna be the Doctor forever and ever, and because you're so cool, and the TARDIS will last forever and ever. And he tells her to fuck off. He's like, stop it, you expect too much, I'm an old man, I can't be around forever. And she's like, but you're magic, right? You're a magic dude.
Yeah, like, you know, in the first scene when she's in 1963, you imagine her being like maybe 5 or 6. By this point, she's almost 10, and it does get to a point where it's a bit too unrealistic for her to be acting like this. Oh, I went to school and I dressed up as a Zarbi, and also this boy says the Zarbi are stupid, and I kills him, and
and she still talks like a 6-year-old as well. Like, she doesn't talk like a 10-year-old basically talks like a person. Yeah. You know, like at that point they're pretty compos mentis when it comes to speaking, but she's still got like baby voice going on, and it's like, what is going on? We then get a scene where Hartnell is in a meeting with Sydney, where Sydney's going to tell him he's getting replaced, and Hartnell is pitching ideas to him beforehand, where he's like, what if the writers came up with like the skeleton of a story and I improvised my way through it? Which I want to see that. I want to see Hartnell improvise his way through a skeleton of a story, please. That would be amazing.
But yeah, he's also like, what if you just write me out and I just pop in occasionally, like I'm a guest star or something, which obviously doesn't
in Doctor
work.
Who, yeah. But Sydney's like, there's no point beating around the bush. I'll just rip the Band-Aid off. We're going to replace you with Inside Number 9. And Hartnell is like, that's a good show. I guess that's okay. Reese Shearsmith is Patrick Troughton, and he is not a good Patrick Troughton. And I really like Reese Shearsmith. I think he's a great actor. I think he's a great writer, and Inside Number 9 is a phenomenal TV show. He is not right for this role, and it's such a small role, and it's so distracting how bad he is in it.
It's really strange. He does get the mannerisms down, but the voice and the appearance are just totally wrong, and you just cannot imagine him as a second Doctor. It's just really distracting for no reason. He looks more like Mo from the Three Stooges. That's what I discovered earlier.
Yeah, he does. He really does. Before we get to meet him in person, however, though, we get another scene, and it's the scene from the start of the movie. Oh my God, we're all the way back at the start, where Hartnell is getting spoken to by that police officer for staring at the phone box, and he gets recognized, and he's like, "Oh my God, you're Doctor Who, aren't you? Wait till I tell the kiddies back home." And then Hartnell like drives off, and being like, "Oh no, you can't recognize me." And it's like a whatever end to that scene. But it's a fun framing device, I guess, to set up the movie. We then get a really heartbreaking moment in the movie where, Hartnell is trying to warm himself up by the fireplace, and he's telling his wife that he's going to be leaving Doctor Who and they're replacing him, and he eventually just breaks down and starts saying, "I am David Tennant, I am David Tennant," over and over again as tears stream down his face. And it's a really good performance by David Bradley. It is genuinely heartbreaking. Like, the tears that he's getting feel real. It's real sad.
Yeah, it really got me the first time, but, when you quote David Tennant, it really just takes me out of the scene. Like, David Bradley's giving off a brilliant performance, and then all of a sudden I'm thinking about David Tennant. Like, thank God they don't do anything more explicit that makes you think of a future Doctor.
Gatiss was really patting himself on the back writing this at moment. Like, there's times in this where it's like, okay, I get it. You're a fan of Doctor Who.
But
but
now I watch the scene and I can kind of remove David Tennant from it all, and I can just get into the groove of it. But it just really took me out of the scene first time I watched it.
And then we get the final scene of the movie where Hartnell meets Patrick Troughton, or at least the alien that has taken over is doing an imitation of Patrick Troughton. Because again, it does not. He looks too young. I understand Patrick Troughton was young, or at least significantly younger than Hartnell when he took in the role. But like, Reece Shearsmith looks like 15 years too young to be Patrick Troughton.
It looks too much like a Halloween costume.
It looks exactly like a Halloween costume. Yeah.
It's just so distracting.
But they have a fun exchange, and it's a genuine, like, it made me laugh. Like, it's a good exchange. It's well written. Where Hartnell's like, I only wanted the best, and Troughton's like, oh, so they couldn't get them, then they got me instead. It's like, yeah, that's the Troughton I know. He's funny and he's energetic and quick, and it's genuinely a lot of fun as the Doctor. They should make a movie about him instead of this one.
They should make a movie about his many wives.
His many affairs. Then we get,
oh Christ,
and it's so upsetting that this is there's 2 minutes left in the movie, and there's not only a massive fuck up, it's also the worst part of the movie, and it leaves such a sour taste in your mouth for this end scene. Where Hartnell looks over to his left at the TARDIS console and he sees Matt Smith. And I understand the metaphor. The show will continue without me. It's going to live way past me into the modern day. It's going to turn into this huge thing. What I'm doing now is I'm saying goodbye to the role that I love, but the show that I love will continue on, etc., etc. However, it's really cheesy. It's really bad. The rotoscoping on whatever Matt Smith episode this is from is really distracting. Matt Smith is looking above Hartnell. He's not looking at him. He's looking above him.
It's actually Matt Smith. Matt Smith shot something for this episode.
Oh, wow. They just did this on green screen then.
Yeah, they did it on green screen because I think he was too busy doing probably either the end of Series 7 or Day of the Doctor. I think Day of the Doctor was shot in like April or something, so he must have been doing the end of Series 7. So he's too busy doing this, so they green screened him in from wherever he was. And they cut up to they do a close up to his hands, and his hands are Mark Gattis's hands. So, and also Mark Gatiss, there's a deleted scene where Mark Gatiss actually plays John Pertwee. The film would have ended with a 1972 photo shoot of the first 3 Doctors together. And then also on the DVD, there's also a creation of what the regeneration from Troughton to Pertwee would look like. He also played the Doctor in a 1999 sketch of Web of Caves. He also played an Unbound Master, and so is he the only actor, Mark Gatiss, to play 3 Doctors and a Master? Like, that's a lot
Possibly.
of Doctors.
And a Scorpion Man. And a
Yeah.
Scorpion Man.
And a Viking Man?
Yeah. Sure, yeah. My guy gets around. But there's one more thing I want to say about this Matt Smith scene that you glossed over that I feel like really needs to be highlighted.
Yeah.
Is this green screen they've done of Matt Smith. There's a scene where it cuts to like a medium close-up of Matt Smith looking at Hartnell. And the shot previous, we see where Matt Smith is standing on this console. He's behind the console because he's pressing the buttons with Mark Gatiss's hands. But in this close-up, for some reason now he's in front of the console. He's teleported forwards because they haven't put him behind the console properly. This is a fluffed up effect shot, and it's insanely distracting. Like, immediately I was like, whoa, that's wrong. Like, it's such a huge mistake to just leave in the movie. It's crazy. Like,
and it's like one of the final shots of the movie. It's basically like the 5th shot from being the final shot. It's insane, but nobody noticed. I don't understand.
It's so weird that was just like agreed. Like, yeah, that's fine. We could just air that, whatever, because it's really bad. But we then end the movie on Hartnell's actual speech for saying goodbye to Susan, and it's just wonderful. It's great.
We
it's
kind
a really
of
nice way to end it.
We kind of slide through an empty studio. We can see the TARDIS, some Daleks in the background, and we just slide over to a monitor that's playing the speech, and it's a brilliant way to end this the movie, but it reminds you of how different David Bradley's performance of the same speech was. That's really distracting.
Yeah. I think part of it as well is hearing Hartnell's speech through the tinny 1960s microphone adds an aesthetic that is missing and when you hear it again. But anyway,
that's something that somebody actually pointed out because recently they just started Big Finish has just started doing box sets where Stephen Noonan plays the first Doctor, and when I first heard the impression, my ears were like, that sounds nothing like the first Doctor. But then somebody put an episode of Doctor Who through an AI filter where the static in the original episodes are now gone, and the first Doctor now sounds a lot like Stephen Noonan's impersonation. So
weird.
So it's hard to replicate William Hartnell because there's so much distortion in the microphones that makes any impression wrong for some reason. It's interesting. It's weird.
As I'm saying, it's shaped by its time. You know, it's done in a backwards era. Then because this is a biopic, we fade out and we see pictures of the cast with their respective person that they were playing and what happened on in their life. I don't know if you want to talk about everything that they went on to do.
Yeah, nothing really to talk about, but it's lovely.
No. And that is the end of Doctor Who: An Adventure in Space and Time. A solid, fun, wholesome biopic. Like, it's totally harmless. It's an easy watch. Makes you feel good. It's a good time. It's a good time.
It's a really strong biopic, compared to Saving Mr. Banks, which came out the week after and was set around a similar time, where that movie just lies about so much. This Doctor Who: An Adventure in Space and Time tells half truths, which is where I think biopics should do. It works. Everything feels accurate. You're not sitting there questioning certain moments or anything. It's really nice. And the acting and the writing are really good, and I'm tired.
Yeah, it's a solid time, and I did enjoy watching it, and it made a nice it's a nice little pit stop before we
Yeah.
ramp up into the craziness that is going to be the 60th anniversary, which happens at the end of this month. Can you
Yeah,
believe
hell
that
yeah.
we are already at New Who season? I can feel it in the air, baby. But we have a few more stops before we get there, as next week we are looking at Torchwood, something borrowed, not something blue. Scott wrote something blue in our show notes last week when I was reading out what we're doing, and because I don't think and only recite the words in front of me, I repeated the mistake that he made. We are looking at the Torchwood episode Something Borrowed, which I have never seen before, so I look forward to watching it and seeing what that is all
It's a
about.
silly
Then
episode.
after Brilliant, excellent. Then after that, we will be looking at some last-minute news and things like that that have been happening throughout November in the build-up to the 60th, which already is a lot. There's already a lot of things that have happened. And then come the 25th of November, thereabouts, for the show episode, the podcast covering it, 60th anniversary, brand new Doctor Who. Holy crap, we are 2 shows away. We are
Yep.
2 episodes away from 60th anniversary Russell T Davies era Doctor Who is back. That's unreal. That doesn't feel real to me. That's crazy
We're
stuff.
so close.
In the meantime, you can find this podcast on Facebook at Who Watches Who, on Twitter at Watches Doctor, at youtube.com/at Who Watches Who Pod, where you can see this podcast in video form. If you're watching on YouTube, like, subscribe, do all that stuff. It's also available in audio form on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music. There's an RSS link to plug us into the podcast app of your choice. You can listen to podcasts on it, we're probably there. Just search Who Watches Who, a Doctor Who podcast, and you can get us in the audio realm. Isn't that wonderful? Until then, we will see you next week as we look at Torchwood. Something blue or borrowed. Something borrowed. Bye-bye.
Bye.